Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone in attendance. The committee has under consideration the estimates for the Ministry of Infrastructure for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2026. I'd like to ask we go around the table, let members introduce themselves. For the record, Minister, if you could introduce yourself and then your officials who are joining you at the table. And note that Hansard is operating the microphone, so we won't have to be grabbing for those as we go. And I'll kick this off to get everyone started. So my name's Shane Getson, MLA for Lac St. Anne Parkland, God's Country, and also the committee chair. And starting to my right with introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin Wright, MLA for the charming constituency of Cypress Medicine.
Good morning, everyone. Ron Weeb, MLA Grand Prairie Wapiti.
Good morning, Chantal DeYoung, MLA for Chestermere Strathmore.
Scott Sear, MLA Bonneville Cold Lake St. Paul.
Jason Staffen, MLA Red Deer South.
Good morning, folks. Martin Long, the MLA for West Yellowhead and the Minister of Infrastructure. And with me today, I'll start with Ghassan on my left, Ghassan El Chazli, Assistant Deputy Minister of Capital Projects and Delivery, Dale Fung, Senior Financial Officer for Infrastructure, Kathy Maniego, my Acting Deputy Minister, and Brad Smith, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Strategic Partnerships and Learning Facilities.
Me. I'm Jasbir Diol, MLA for Edmonton Meadows, and I'm also the Shadow Minister for Infrastructure. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Raki Pancholi, MLA for Edmonton Whitemed.
Morning, everyone. Lizette Tejada, MLA for Calgary Klein.
Hi, everybody. Peggy Wright, MLA for Edmonton Beverly Clairview.
Perfect. And we have two rights aboard today again. That's always fun. Yeah. So there aren't any members joining us remotely. If they do, we'll just give them the cautions about turning on the microphone, waving hands remotely, and cameras, of course. I'd like to announce the following substitutions. For the record, we have Member Tejada for Member Leola, Deputy Chair, Mr. Dack for Member Hiol, but I don't see Mr. Dack here. And we have Member Beaupre as well, or Member Deal for Member Beaupre, but I don't see that here as well today. We have Mr. Weeb for Mr. Van Dyken, so that one is correct, and Member Wright for Elmengi. Did I say that incorrectly again? Emelengi? Emelengi? Okay, perfect. I'll get that right correct here one day. As I noted earlier here, microphones are operated by Hansard. Committee proceedings are live streamed on the United Broadcast Assembly TV. Audio and video streams and transcripts of the meetings can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. Remote participants, we kind of covered that. For those in the room, please set your cell phones and your devices to the least disturbing function as possible. Speaking time and limits. So members, the main estimates for the Ministry of Infrastructure shall be considered for 3 hours. Standing Order 5901 sets the process for consideration of the main estimates in legislative policy committees. Suborder 59016 sets out the speaking rotations for this meeting. Speaking rotation chart is available on the committee's internal website, and hard copies have been provided to the ministry officials at the table. For each segment of the meeting provided to the ministry officials, for each segment of the meeting, blocks of speaking time will be combined only if both the minister and the member speaking agree. If debate is exhausted prior to 3 hours, the ministry estimates are deemed to have been considered for the time allotted in the main estimate schedule, and the committee shall adjourn. Should members have any questions regarding speaking times to rotation, please email or message the clerk, and he's the gentleman sitting to my left. With concurrence of the committee, I'd like to call a 5-minute break near the midpoint of the meeting, and then we'll continue on after that. Note the 3-hour clock will continue to run. Does anyone oppose to having a bio break partway through? Appreciate it. Chair is much appreciative of that. Ministry officials who are present may, at the direction of the minister, address the committee. Ministry officials seated in the gallery, if called upon, have access to the microphone in the gallery area and are asked to please introduce themselves for the record. So obviously the podium over there. Space permitting, opposition caucus staff may sit at the table to assist their members. However, members have priority to sit at the table all time. Points of order will be dealt with as they arrive, and individual speaking times will be paused. However, the block of the speaking time shall be overall through meeting and continue to run. Any written materials provided in response to the questions raised during the main estimate should be tabled by the Minister of the Assembly for the benefit of all members, and the committee should have an opportunity to hear both questions and answers without interruption during the estimates debate. Debate flows through the chair at all times, including instances when speaking, and time is shared between the member and the ministers. And what keeps decorum awfully handy is we stick to the items within the estimates. It makes it easy for me to follow along as the chair and those folks following at home. If you reference to the book that you're talking about in a section or page number, it'd be awfully handy. And we had another member join us at the table. If you could introduce yourself into the record, sir.
Hey, good morning. My name is Parmeet Singh Bopare, MLA from Calgary Falcon Ridge.
Appreciate it, sir. And with that, is everyone good to go? Minister, you have 10 minutes for your opening remarks. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for your time today. So while I'm still getting used to this role, I am pleased to be on this side of the table today to present Alberta Infrastructure's estimates for the 2025-26 fiscal year and our 2025-28 business plan. With me at the table are some dedicated and hardworking Albertans, great members of our public service, and of which we all owe a debt of gratitude. I've already introduced them, so I won't go through that again, but I would like to take a moment to point out in the gallery my Chief of Staff, Brian Rogers, my Policy Advisor, Jared Gustafson, my Press Secretary, Benji Smith, and other ministry representatives. As Alberta's Minister of Infrastructure, my focus is on ensuring Albertans get the new, modernized, and well-maintained public infrastructure that they need, on time and in a fiscally responsible manner. Throughout Alberta, infrastructure is managing hundreds of projects. We are actively modernizing or building new schools, health and mental health facilities, and government-owned buildings like courthouses and correctional facilities. We are also upgrading and repairing existing government and health facilities to ensure Albertans today and long into the future have continued access to the vital programs and services they need for healthy and prosperous lives. This past fiscal year, 2024-2025, in addition to all the projects underway in planning, design, and construction, infrastructure completed 24 projects above the $3 million threshold. These 24 projects were worth about $750 million in total. In more detail, we completed construction of 11 new or modernized schools in 10 locations across the province, including Fort Vermilion, Grand Prairie, and Sherwood Park, 3 health facilities and 1 mental health facility, including the Rocky View General Hospital redevelopment project in Calgary and the Calgary Valley View Lodge Recovery Community, and 9 major capital maintenance and renewal projects to upgrade or repair existing government facilities, including one I am particularly happy about, construction of the new reflecting pool and dome fountain at the Legislature grounds, which was completed in time for Albertans and visitors to enjoy over the Canada Day long weekend celebrations this summer. We are also on track to have the second and final phase of the Legislature grounds project, the River Water Feature, open this spring. On another note, while delivering all these projects, I'd also like to highlight that Infrastructure's Public Works Act was amended last year to mandate payment timelines and invoicing provisions for public infrastructure work. This helps ensure contractors and subcontractors are paid fairly and promptly, and builds on our overall commitment to foster strong relationships with industry to ensure that Albertans get the timely, cost-effective infrastructure that they need. Looking at Budget 2025, our government is meeting the challenges faced by our province with continued investments in education and health, lower taxes for families, and a focus on supporting the economy. Infrastructure will continue to play an important role in meeting these challenges by delivering on our hundreds of existing projects in addition to new projects from this year's capital plan. Overall, through the 2025 capital plan, infrastructure will be investing $6 billion over the next 3 years into public infrastructure across our great province. This is an increase of $321 million, or 5.6% from last year's capital plan. Breaking down this $6 billion investment over the next 3 years, which is almost 1/4 of the government's total capital plan, my ministry will deliver on $2.6 billion for school facilities, $2.6 billion for health and mental health and addiction facilities, $328 million for the renewal of government-owned facilities, $298 million for accommodation projects, and $178 million for government facilities. To give you an idea of how this spending is allocated over the next year, I'd like to turn now to infrastructure's estimates for 2025-26, where we have $2.4 billion being allocated for spending this upcoming year. Of this total, a majority, $1.9 billion, is in the capital investment vote. This is an increase of $481 million, or 35%, from the 2024-25 forecast. This increase is due to project scheduling and cash flow requirements for approved major projects, as well as additional funding approved in Budget 2025. Cash flows are fine-tuned as projects progress from planning to construction, which can affect the timing of expenditures. Funds in the capital investment vote align with desired outcome one of Alberta Infrastructure's business plan, which is innovative, adaptive, and responsible infrastructure solutions that meet current and future provincial needs. This outcome reflects infrastructure's role in the timely, cost-effective planning, design, and construction of public facilities that are necessary to support the delivery of government programs and services. The majority of our capital investment is split between schools and health facilities. Our school infrastructure budget for 2025-26 is $806 million. This provides funds for dozens of new and modernized schools that are currently being built. This investment includes $213 million in new funding to support 38 school projects and modular classrooms, a result of the government's commitment to accelerate school projects to help meet increased demand. Our capital targets also include health and mental health and addiction facility infrastructure, which is budgeted at $787 million for 2025-26. This includes funding to build new health facilities as well as modernizing or completing capital maintenance and renewal work on existing facilities. Some key health projects include the redevelopment of the Red Deer Regional Hospital Center, which is expected to begin construction this year, construction of the Lacrete Maternity and Community Health Center, and the University of Alberta Hospital Brain Center Neurosciences Intensive Care Unit project in Edmonton. Health capital funding also supports the planning, design, and construction of mental health and addiction facilities in various locations, including Calgary, Edmonton, and Grand Prairie. Infrastructure's 2025-26 capital budget also includes $265 million for property acquisitions, maintenance and renewal at government-owned facilities, accommodation projects, and the delivery of major capital projects such as the Red Deer Justice Center, Canmore Nordic Center upgrades, and Yellowhead Youth Center in Edmonton. Expanding on funding for capital maintenance and renewal, or CMR, I note that Infrastructure's capital plan allocates $864 million over the next 3 years for projects that help keep our existing government-owned health and P3 school facilities in good working condition, which is critical. Now we will look at Infrastructure's 2025-26 expense vote that primarily supports desired outcome 2 of Infrastructure's business plan, which states Alberta's public infrastructure is effectively and responsibly managed and sustainable. This outcome reflects my ministry's efforts to effectively manage government-owned and operated facilities with a focus on responsible financial stewardship, a commitment to quality and efficient use of government assets. Overall, the expense budget covers funding for day-to-day operations of more than 1,500 infrastructure-owned or leased buildings, as well as operation of the Swan Hills Treatment Center, management of leased space and land services to meet government program needs, and staffing to support these activities. About 90% of all operating expense is devoted to the management of government space, the most significant components being for leases and property management. Much of this budget is contractually committed. In 2025-26, Infrastructure's expense vote is $502 million. This is an increase of $9.5 million, or 1.9%, from the 2024-25 forecast. This slight difference is mainly due to cash flow requirements for the demolition of the former Royal Alberta Museum site in Edmonton, Glenorah's community. In closing, Infrastructure is committed to working with industry and ministry partners to complete work on time and on budget, ensuring maximum value for taxpayers, while delivering the essential infrastructure needed to support the demands of Alberta's growing communities. Again, I thank you all for the opportunity to present Alberta Infrastructure's 2025-26 estimates and the 2025-28 business plan. Now I'll turn it back to you, Chair, and I'm happy to take questions.
Perfect, thank you, Minister. And before we get started in the next block, we'll just run out how that works. 60 minutes goes to the official opposition. No one may speak longer than 10 minutes at a time. Default time is 10 minutes, maximum speaking time, and request to combine time is revisited with each member. So basically, ask in advance, let us know on the shot clock up front if it's going to be combined or block time agreed by the minister and yourselves, and you can transfer time. Nobody can speak longer than 10 minutes. And with that, whoever wants to speak, just get the chair's attention so I can, perfect. Member Deal, I recognize you, and please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister. So before I say anything, I would like to ask, would you like to share the time, or?
If it's all right with you, I'd like to do block time to start with today.
Long time, okay, thank you. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you for being here, accompanied by your deputies and your staff doing the work on behalf of Albertans. And here to provide some information with line of questioning. I just wanted to be clear that we are all here for transparency and asking questions on behalf of Albertans so they can have knowledge and information with regards to what they have in their mind. You know, we have shared goal and we agree. We are on both sides here to serve Albertans. Thank you. So on the budget, Minister, I would like to start with your ministry mandate and the business plan. It says Alberta continues to experience substantial pressure on our infrastructure, such as schools, healthcare facilities, roads, and other public facilities due to the province's ongoing rapid population growth. The 2025 capital plan addressed key growth-related pressures while continuing to invest in the other priorities area to support Albertans and the growth of Alberta economy. The budget 2025 features significant capital investment in education, K-12 post-secondary, affordable housing, roads, bridges, healthcare, municipalities, priorities. And it also highlights the 2.6 billion over 3 years for educational infrastructure, K-12 infrastructure. The ministry seems to be aware of and acknowledge the growing need for infrastructure facilities. I broadly see the ministry's mandate. And we agree on that part. You know, the population growth has been very rapid and there have been some capacity challenges. We all agreed many times in the House what Alberta is facing. So to be able to keep pace up with ever-increasing demand for services due to the population growth. So there are roughly 20,000 more students registered in Alberta schools every year, and our school boards are struggling to keep up with the demand as many schools in the province are running their operations near 90 to 100% of the capacity they have. The schools are running a lottery-based admission system. Because of their capacity, I receive complaints. Even as of today, I have calls from my constituents. They're struggling to admit their kids into their school in the neighborhood. So the constituents who purchased homes just across the street from the school building, even paying higher price, extra costs, understanding, you know, assuming that it will make their life better for the next 5-6 years. So kids don't have to, you know, travel hours of time to get to the school. So they are experiencing nothing but right now despair because applications for admissions of their kids are lost in the lottery system. Through the chair, my question to the minister would be how much of that $2.6 billion that is in the business plan is being spent or dedicated in the budget of 2025-2026 to build new schools, specifically to expand capacity in the province to address the challenge we are facing. How many new school projects with the capital funding will start construction in this current year? And Minister, once again, I would really appreciate if you can explain or shed light on how many of these school projects are in the city of Edmonton and are in the city of Calgary. My question is not about the projects under design. How many school projects are under construction right now? And how many new projects will actually have shovels in the ground in the current year? And how many of those will be public schools and how many are private schools? And one of the grave concerns from my stakeholders is why the government is building these schools under P3 models. Once it had denounced the idea due to discrepancies and costs related to P3s. So it is known that more than 90% of the Alberta students still study and graduate through public schools compared to private for-profit schools. My question for clarity through the chair once again would be how much in this budget and specifically this year is being spent to add capacity in the province's public school system? How many spaces will be added? And where can we see it in the government estimates? Once again, through the chair, Minister, my question is on the information on page 99 of the ministry business plan under building and communities. Line 2 of the first paragraph states that at the beginning with the 2025 budget, 8.6 billion is being allocated to new schools construction acceleration program to kickstart constructions on up to 30 new schools. So my question around that is, what is the expected timeline of that, the big announcement of $8.6 billion the government had allocated to school projects? So which population growth metric is the government taking into consideration to properly fund the education system and add capacity to address the current challenge of student space in the public school system and meet the growing demand for capacity in the schools for the future years? My question is also, Minister, if the funding of $8.6 billion is projected to kickstart 30 new schools construction projects, and the government is only spending $2.6 billion for the next 3 years as to your business plan. So 8.6 billion is for 30 new projects and the 2.6 billion, but we understand serve to build about 7 new school projects only. And that is even in next 3 years, that's not even in this school, this current year. The 2025-2026 government estimates on the page 138, line item is 2.3. The school facility infrastructure have allocated $697,000 only. This funding seems very small, and is the rest of the funding for school infrastructure coming through capital grants? And can the minister also elaborate on what projects this funding will go to directly? Because this doesn't seem to be enough to fully meet all government announcements around school projects. On page 106 of the fiscal plan, there is a discrepancies between the budgeted and forecasted amounts for the capital spending on previously announced school projects. The government missed their target and only spent 75% of what should have been spent. In their words, the funding was underspent by $157 million allocated dollars to build a new school projects. So this is a big gap in the announcement and what exactly we spent. Through the chair, once again, Minister, if you can explain why the money promised for building new schools was not spent, how many schools and which schools specifically did not receive funding due to this significant underspending on capital projects. So what impacts does the minister think this underspend will have on the timelines of the schools being opened? And how much is the government relying on private funding under P3 models for these projects that have been considered not only unhelpful, but rather costliest and unsustainable plans by successive governments previously, including not only previous PC government did it, NDP government, but the last term, this UCP government also had the same view around that. Again, through the chair, Minister, are you aware of the P3 risks? And how many P3 schools is this government constructing this year? And how many schools will be built in P3 next year? And what are the budgetary negotiations with the private partners. I would really appreciate if we can have. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, member for that. And Minister, the next 10 minutes is back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, member, for your questions. I will I'll allow ministry officials to jump in on a few things today, a number of things actually today. But for starters, I'd like to actually just acknowledge, even this week, to be involved with the Minister of Education at an announcement of new schools in Edmonton and the excitement of those by the Edmonton Public School Chair and the Catholic School Chair who were on site, and then many members of the community and school boards, and how they acknowledged that it was desperately needed and would be a very well-received message. So thank you for your advocacy for Edmonton in particular and all the province on that. That said, as you pointed out, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to keep up with the rapid growth of our province and the pressures on our school system. It's one of the exciting things about the school accelerator program that we have brought in is, over historically, as projects went from funding to planning to design to construction, those projects would have to wait for the next budget cycle to take those next steps from planning to design to construction. So basically, you would be looking at a minimum of 3 years from the money being allocated for a project before you would potentially see shovels in the ground. And that's, again, one of the exciting things that even the school board chairs and the principals this week at that announcement were ecstatic about, is that the faster that we are able to move through the process with them, the faster that funding gets directed to them so they can actually move towards construction. With that, I'll turn it over to Brad.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Great questions. In collaboration with the Ministry of Education and school authorities, Infrastructure designs, builds, and modernizes the school facilities to ensure Alberta's K-12 students and communities have access to modern, well-designed learning spaces. School capital projects are delivered through 2 streams: infrastructure managed projects as well as grant-funded projects that are managed by school jurisdictions. Infrastructure does lead the planning, design, construction, and closeout activities for infrastructure managed school capital projects and provides oversight on the grant-funded projects that are delivered by school jurisdictions. So, as you pointed out, there are several major school projects underway, resulting in hundreds of jobs in our province related to planning, design, and construction that continues to strengthen our economy. In September, specifically on September 18th, 2024, the Premier announced a commitment of $8.6 billion in capital investment through the School Construction Accelerator Program, which will allow our government to kickstart up to 30 new schools and as many as 8 modernization and replacement schools every year for the next 3 years, as well as the rollout of modular classrooms beginning in this budget. So, education works closely with the school boards. They remain responsible for identifying school priorities and obtaining the approval for the school capital projects. Together, we provide new and modernized schools for Alberta families and communities. Budget 2025 provides $2.6 billion to invest in school infrastructure throughout the province over the next 3 years. $806.1 million of that will be spent in the next fiscal year, supporting the delivery of school projects. Currently, there are 80 active projects, including 8 in planning, 51 in design, 15 in construction, 4 on hold, and 2 in post-construction. And so as those projects advance, obviously we will have projects going from planning to design to construction, and we will see increasing numbers of construction in the coming years. 11 school facilities will be built or modernized in 2024-25, creating space for approximately 10,000 students in 10 communities. including Black Falls, Coaldale, Edmonton, Fort Vermilion, Grand Prairie, Langdon, Leduc, Manning, Red Deer, and Sherwood Park. And in addition, through the new in-year accelerated program as part of the school construction accelerated program, incremental funding of $617.5 million has been approved to progress 22 previously approved projects into the next stages of their life, from planning to design or from design to construction. Over the next 3 years, you asked about regional breakdown. Infrastructure school capital plan spending of $2.6 billion is broken down by region as follows: $586.9 million in Edmonton, $410.2 million in Calgary, and $1.4 billion throughout the rest of the project, as well as $236.2 million for province-wide programs to be allocated, such as CMR. Okay. Regarding P3s, so government has employed the use of P3s to deliver school bundles in the past and continues to do so to provide urgently needed school facilities as quickly as possible to meet demand and at less cost than if delivered through traditional methods. So we assess all school projects to see if P3 is viable, and by bundling similar projects in similar geographic areas, we can get economies of scale on both the construction as well as the maintenance over a 30-year period of those schools, and that's how we generate value for money. We only deliver schools when there is value for money generated. The bundles are managed under a single contractual arrangement to design, build, finance, and maintain the schools. In 2025-28 capital plan, $8.1 million has been allocated over the next 2 years for maintenance work related to P3 School Bundle 2, which successfully opened last year for students in September. This bundle was comprised of 5 high schools located across Alberta. They include Father Michael McCaffrey Catholic High School in Edmonton, Elder Dr. Francis Whiskey Jack School in Edmonton, Iron Ridge Secondary Campus in Black Falls, Opahu Secondary School in Leduc, and Horseshoe Crossing High School in Langdon. Construction was completed on all 5 of these bundled high schools on May 31st, 2024, and opened successfully last year, providing 6,375 new student spaces. It is important to note as well, all P3 schools are owned and operated by the school divisions. The P3 contractor just is the maintenance provider. There are $324.8 million approved for P3 School Bundle 5 over the next 3 years in the capital plan. This is a bundle of 6 schools, including a new K-5 school in Black Falls, a new K-9 school in Chestermere, a new K-9 school in Nolan Hill in Calgary, a new 7-12 school in Glenrading Heights in Edmonton, replacement of the K-6 École Good Shepherd with a new K-9 school in Okotoks, and a new K-8 school in Southwest Airdrie. Procurement has been completed for this bundle with the preferred proponent selected and contract expected to be executed by the end of March. When completed, these schools will provide 5,350 new student spaces. We are working with our municipal partners on these schools to incorporate designs as well that expand the construction and use of these facilities to maximize benefit for the local community. So showing again, P3 can be flexible. We can work with stakeholders and partners to do things like incorporate additional gym space or community amenity that is then funded by those partners.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. So, as we've already, had lots of headlines around it, the School Accelerator Program, the previously approved school projects will actually create 50,000 new and updated student spaces in the next 3 years. The School Construction Accelerator Program will create approximately 150,000 additional new and updated student spaces, including that 150 includes over 100,000 new student spaces and over 16,600 updated student spaces, additional spaces through new or relocated modular classrooms, and approximately 12,500 new public charter school spaces. So that's how we anticipate that we are on track to deliver 200,000 student spaces over the next 7 years. And I know that we have a few left, but I only have 2 seconds left on the timer, so.
Well, there's a good thing the first block was 60 minutes, and MLA Diol, is it back to you?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just ask if it's block or shared. We have to do that every time.
Yeah, so would you like to share this block or?
If we can try the block a little bit more, I'm sure eventually I'll get my feet under me, but.
Thank you, Mr. I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate you for your new role. And I understand that you might not have all the answer to all the questions and concerns I'm raising, and you will be most welcome to provide answers if you don't have any answers right now in writing later on. That would be equally perfect. Once again, Minister, I just wanted to refer to page 44 of the business plan. So there is a $3.3 billion of capital investment over the next 3 years. However, as the Krupke scandal continues to grow, and very recently this ministry saw their previous minister step down because of these concerns around government procurement specifically. And given that the allocations of the funds is one of the largest procurements seen in the budget, it is important that all the Albertans have confidence in how these procurements for these capital projects happened. Through the chair, once again, to the minister, can you share with us the documents that would validate these projects for Albertans so that can build their confidence? And also, if the minister is going to use any firm which has or had any sorts of involvement of Rubicon, Marshall Smith, the Premier's former Chief of Staff's lobbying firm, to achieve any of their mandate. So my question is on behalf of so many constituents and specifically the emails we are getting and the stakeholders concerners.
It's been called.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to say that I'd like to call this as 23B, and I also would like to go with 23J as well. 23B this is out of the scope of this meeting. The member hasn't referenced where he's looking at within the budget or the fiscal framework. I also I recognize that the former minister had concerns regarding a separate ministry, and I'm not sure how this relates to this ministry. Also, going down this road, it will likely cause disorder in this committee if we continue on this line of questioning, sir. So please rule that question and the following points that he's made out of order, sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not a point of order. The member clearly referenced page 44 of the business plan and the budget documents in his question. I understand that the questions related to concerns that the former Minister of Infrastructure raised around procurement across government, which would include the ministry he's responsible for, a matter of which has been referred to the Auditor General, may cause disorder, but that disorder is actually just a difficult question that I think is right within the scope of this committee to discuss. So that is not a point of order. Difficult questions should be asked of ministers in this room. It is not. It is very relevant to the discussion here. So this is simply not a point of order, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so at this time, not a point of order. Obviously, we want to ask difficult questions. What I want from all committee members here is to make sure that we maintain decorum. Some of the rules that really seem to help that, if members can agree to that, we have a lot of latitude in some of the language we use in the House, which is kind of a different environment. Quite honestly, I want to keep this boring like a business room. So if the member could heed that, understand that potentially using different language to ask your questions on some of those more contentious items. And then please continue, and we'll try to monitor ourselves accordingly. If the chair feels that we tend to be slipping back there, so we don't waste a bunch of time in points of order, I might caution the member or quietly try to intervene to steer the language a little bit differently. Member, are you okay with that MLA deal? Please continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate your guidance and instructions in this. Definitely, I just wanted to, I was trying to express the importance and background of the question where this question was coming from, and I was very straightforward to a question related to the page 44, the business plan. And further to that, I would also like to briefly touch on procurement for mental health and addictions. There are 11 recovery communities being built. Only 3 have been completed and the rest are still coming. The Ministry of Health and Addictions noted that these projects are funded through capital funding on page 108 of the fiscal plan from the Ministry of Infrastructure. So through the chair, once again, Minister, can you please explain why we would then identify private for-profit companies from out of province when we have a lot of exceptionally talented organizations that have been operating here for many decades who cannot seem to get any of those contracts? What were the identified criteria or the other matrix that secured these contracts for those out-of-province providers? Are all these private facilities being paid the same amounts, or do they have vary as wildly as some of the numbers that we see in the other elements of the healthcare system? And once again, through the chair, Minister, does this government have any liability to projects completed under the P3 models? For example, if government is allocating and keeping any money, any funding for regular maintenance or fixing, or discrepancies found in the P3 projects. Also, Minister, if you can provide, this is really helpful. I asked the previous minister that can help address a lot of concerns if the ministry can provide a value for money report when we are using the private sector into the public infrastructure projects. Minister, I really feel that Albertans deserve to know their tax dollars are being spent wisely. In 2025-2026, the government estimates general revenue fund on page 138 in line item 3.3. The government-owned facilities preservations, which is described as repairs, upgrades, maintenance, and replacement of building systems and building services. Can the minister speak to how much of the funding from this line does to maintenance on government buildings that were built as P3s? And also, once again, through the chair to the minister, if you can tell us how many contracts for new infrastructure the government currently has and that will be using P3s to complete the projects. How does the ministry choose which private contractors to collaborate with for P3s? Does the ministry develop a criteria to determine eligibility of P3 partners? Is that criteria posted and made publicly available to Albertans? Under the outcome 1 on page 102, in the 2025-28 business plan for the infrastructure, the key objective 1.2 refers to exploring P3s to deliver public infrastructure for Albertans. Performance metric 1.b appears most relevant to P3s. However, there are 2 common approaches to measuring performance in terms of on-schedule completion, particularly for larger and complex projects. The initial forecast completion date model measures performance against the initial completion date forecast as it reflects an agreed upon timeline at the start of the project. The latest completion date forecast model evaluates performance based on the latest or last update schedule and considers challenges, change orders to other reasons for timeline adjustments. It allows for flexibility in addressing evolving circumstances. So Minister, I would really appreciate if you can shed more light, which model does the ministry use to identify the targets and measures successfully completion of a project on schedule under performance metering 1.b on the page 102. My next question is regarding the capital plan. In the last budget, the funding projection of 34.8 billion was announced for Stollery Hospital. And the government bragged about their plan for this hospital to mitigate the public rage over South Edmonton Hospital. Surprisingly, this funding has been almost gone to none. And it was projected in the last capital plan 5.8 for this year. But I see in 2025, 2028 capital plan, it shows only for 1 million. So what has the change in this plan? What is going to impact the ministry's plan? Or how it's going to impact the Stollery's Children's Hospital? Another thing, Red Deer Regional Hospital received 21.6 million cut this year from the funding that was projected in the 2024-2027 capital plan. And the funding was projected to receive $253 million in the next 2 years in the last capital plan. So why is that? What is the government compromising in this project? And what has changed since last year? So the cost has gone significantly up due to inflation and so many other factors. But the funding is going down by 34%. So is the government planning to shelve something from their projected original plan? Or how would it contribute to the completion of this project in Red Deer? And on page 138 of the government budget estimates, we also saw considerable cut. It's almost 33%. The dollar amount by 156 million from health facilities, infrastructure and operating expenses last year. And now we see it has received further cut of $742,000. So this cuts amount to 24% again. So we see a combined cut to this line item by 58% in 2 years. That is a massive cut to this line item. So how it's going to impact the government planning? I would really appreciate some of the answer to those questions.
Thank you, Member. And Minister, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member, for the questions. I'll actually start. You had begun your time asking about the previous minister and comments that they made. I don't speak for anyone else's words, so for comment on that, if you want to take it up with them, I'd appreciate that. Your question about Rubicon has no contracts, so thank you for that. Around procurement, I'm actually really pleased to talk about that. We could talk about that probably for our entire three hours between procurement and P3s. I'll touch on procurement a bit with this block, if that's okay. So infrastructure's procurement process is aligned with trade agreements, contract law, directives, and the Government of Alberta's Procurement Accountability Framework. The Government of Alberta's Procurement Accountability Framework ensures procurement activities are conducted in a fair, open, and transparent manner. Infrastructure follows the guidance developed by Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction within the PAF, the Procurement Accountability Framework, as it provides consistent procurement guidelines and direction for all ministries. Trade agreements regulate trade between jurisdictions, reduce barriers, and set monetary thresholds as to when the agreements are applicable. Procurement posting thresholds are governed by the New West Partnership Trade Agreement, as it contains the lowest dollar thresholds requiring open public tender for procurements greater than $75,000 for services or $100,000 for construction. Infrastructure posts procurement opportunities to the Alberta Purchasing Connection website, where interested parties can access opportunities for all the GOA. Procurement opportunities are open to all businesses. Infrastructure uses a category management program to improve and expedite procurements. By streamlining the qualification stage for the most common categories, infrastructure is able to engage the services with shorter lead time and with vendors who meet a common department standard on qualifications and experience. 3 category management strategies are currently in use: pre-qualification requests, bulk contracts, and multi-contract request for proposals. The ministry awards a majority of contracts to Alberta-based companies. 2023-24, 345 out of 365 firms that were awarded contracts were Alberta-based firms, or 94.5%. The proportional spend that went to Alberta-based firms for 23-24 was 97.2%, or $827 million out of $851.4 million. Between April and September 2024, 169 out of 181, or 93.4%, firms were awarded contracts were Alberta-based. In this period, the proportional spend that went to Alberta-based firms was 98.4%, or $1.235 billion out of $1.255 billion. Alberta infrastructure uses the following procurement approaches: tender, where proponents are invited to submit bids or pricing. Compliance is confirmed by procurement team and awards are to the lowest bidder. Used for design, bid, build, delivery method. Request for qualifications. That's used to shortlist qualified vendors to bid on procurements. Proposals are scored based on predetermined criteria. Typically, the top 3 to 5 highest scoring proponents receive the subsequent request for proposal and submit their proposals. That's used for design, bid, build, construction manager, and design, build, project delivery methods. The request for proposal includes mandatory and desirable provisions, which are scored by an evaluation committee. The committee evaluates qualifications and experience. The technical evaluation is usually weighted at 80% of the score and pricing the remaining 20%. That's used for design, bid, build, construction manager, and design, build, project delivery methods. Pre-qualification request. That's utilized to register vendors on a source list. Proposals are reviewed to ensure they meet mandatory requirements or minimum scoring thresholds. Used for design, bid, build, construction manager, and design, build, project delivery methods. Request for quotes is used for below trade agreement threshold procurements when seeking quotes from a minimum of 3 vendors. Infrastructure confirms compliance and awards to the lowest bidder. That's used for design, bid, build, project delivery methods. And also qualification-based selection. That's a request for proposal. Qualification submissions are scored and negotiations occur on the scope of services, terms and conditions, and price with the preferred vendor. If negotiations are unsuccessful, the procurement team enters into negotiations with the next highest scoring vendor. That's used for design, bid, build, construction manager, and design, build, project delivery methods. A continuous improvement project began in March of 2018 and sought to improve procurement timelines by focusing on process improvements. There are 5 distinct steps in a procurement. Development, so that's the time from when document development starts in procurement to posting of RFP tender. Posting, the period for RFP tender, public posting on Alberta Purchasing Connection website. Evaluation, time from closing or RFP tender to completion of evaluation consensus to determine the winning proponent. Award, the time for Government of Alberta approval of award to issuance of engagement communication, and execution, time from issuance of engagement communication to completion of contract execution. If it's okay, I'll just throw it over to Gaston to talk about your questions around Red Deer in particular.
Thank you, Minister. So the Red Deer Hospital was approved in budget 2022 at $1.8 billion, as everybody's aware. Preceding that, of course, it had undergone an accelerated planning process, which entailed the preparation of a needs assessment over several years, and a business case that was accelerated within 8 months, and then thereafter, after the approval, it went through a functional program for a year. Generally speaking, about all those regarding major projects, cost estimates and timelines are assessed as the planning process progresses. The level of detail or the detailed resolution as to the exact expenditure required and the visibility to what the cash flow would look like increases with time as the projects progress through the different planning phases and then going into the design, etc. So obviously the cash flows that were approved in budget 2022 were based on very specific parameters. As we progress through the projects and contractors are retained through public procurement, both contractors and consultants would have their own view of how to go about completing the job, and that would end up with an adjustment to the cash flow to suit the actual method of delivery, and as well as their own view of how to go about scheduling their work. That results in a lot of cases, or in a few cases, in the cash being reallocated from a cash flow perspective. It does not reflect a reduction in the budget. The total budget is still the same. Regarding the Red Deer Hospital, it's one of the largest projects that the Alberta government has ever undertaken. Alberta's government is committed to ensuring residents of the Red Deer region can access the care they need when and where they need it. There are two major components of this redevelopment. So the overall $1.8 billion project was split into two main components. Project one is the construction of a new patient tower and centralized power plant, along with the expansion and renovation of the existing hospital's main building. And phase two is the construction of an ambulatory building. Early site works are complete on the project, including demolishing the previous annex building and surface parking lot, and construction of the new patient tower is now underway. The completed project will add up to 200 new beds for a total of 570 at the hospital. Over the next 3 years, the 2025 capital plan is providing $579 million towards the total investment of $1.8 billion for the redevelopment of this hospital and its interim cath lab. The project will upgrade and enable several services throughout the hospital, including additional patient tower, a new centralized power plant, 6 new operating rooms, a new medical devices reprocessing department, 2 cardiac catheterization labs, renovations to various areas within the main building, newly renovated and expanded emergency department, and new ambulatory building located adjacent to the surface parking. The functional program that I referenced began in April 2022 and was finished in March 2023. Design began in June 2023 and was completed in October 2024. In August 24, Clark Builders was awarded the construction manager contract to build a new patient tower and expand and renovate.
Well, thank you. We'll go back to recognize MLA Panjoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, and thank you to all the officials for being here today. So I wanted to follow up on some questions raised by my colleague, MLA Diol, related to school facilities building, and in particular, of course, line 2.3 of the budget. Mr. Smith gave a very great overview. I appreciate that of how infrastructure projects are managed for school facilities when it is as a public board who is doing that. I guess my question would be around, and I'm sorry, I didn't ask this question. Minister, would you like to share time?
We continue with block time, Member Pancholi. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I assumed, so I was proceeding, but I just realized I didn't actually ask the question.
Looking for anyone to buck. So far, so good.
With respect to private schools infrastructure, this is, of course, going to be one of the first times that we see in a provincial budget that the capital funds will be spent by the government on private school infrastructure to build. So how will those infrastructure projects be managed? Mr. Smith mentioned both, there's the two streams, infrastructure, Alberta Infrastructure Managed Schools, and grants to school boards. For private schools, which stream will that be, private schools be built under? If it is going to be grants to entities, it won't be school boards, but perhaps a private school entity which is operating it, who is going to be building those schools. What insight, transparency will Alberta Infrastructure have over how those contracts are going to be allocated, and determine what, RFP process, if it will be tendered, or like similarly, if it's going to be infrastructure managed builds, how will that be transparently procured, I think is the question to ask. I wanted to ask a little bit about, perhaps at another time, table the minister can table just details on the four projects that the Mr. Smith mentioned were currently on hold when it came to the 80 current active school projects. Details around why those four are on hold would be appreciated. I also want to follow up. I had the privilege yesterday to sit in on the estimates with the Minister of Treasury, Board and Finance, and of course he referenced the significant investment in the capital plan for the entire government budget this year. However, along with mentioning, and it is a significant investment in capital plan, the minister did also talk about repeatedly his doubts and concerns about the government's ability to achieve the goals of that capital plan and to actually build all the projects that have been listed in the capital plan because of great deals of uncertainty. And particularly, he raised, which many of us are aware of, the uncertainty around tariffs, how that cost will affect many building projects, and their ability to come in on budget, as well as, of course, I think the phrase he uses that, we might hit the ceiling on labor capacity, right, to actually construct these buildings, this sort of very ambitious plan that the government has. And therefore, I guess my question, Minister, through the chair, would be, how will Albertans know which infrastructure projects should they run over budget, which I think is, it's a fair risk to consider. Which projects will be put on hold, or perhaps delayed, or perhaps canceled, and how does the ministry make those decisions as to how to assess that risk? So that's a couple questions around that. I want to switch to another line of questioning related to line item 5.2 in the budget, which is land services, which, as I understand from the budget, deals with negotiating and administering the purchase and sale of real estate for government initiatives, and managing land use agreements, easements, and right of way. So under that line item, I guess I have some questions when the Ministry of Infrastructure is choosing to purchase a piece of property, whether it be land or building, but choose to purchase property. How does that communicated out to the public? So if there is a piece of land that the government is interested in, do they just see what's on the market and they go out and put in a bid as any other purchaser might? Do they indicate publicly anywhere that they are interested in purchasing this land? If they do not publicly disclose that within the Ministry of Infrastructure, how do they, ensure that there are protections around communications going out to potential sellers of land, to make sure that it's not publicly available that government's going to be buying a piece of land or is interested in it? How is that protected? Because as we can imagine, and I'll be clear, there are certain allegations made about how a certain piece of land, and I'll speak specifically to it through the chair, Minister, a piece of property located at 14425 124th Avenue in Edmonton, allegedly that there is a piece of land next to a provincial building, and government infrastructure purchased that land, but just 3 months prior to purchasing that land was actually purchased by Sam Raish, who's been implicated in many allegations around infrastructure and procurement issues. Purchased that land, he managed to turn it over for a $300,000 profit in just a matter of months. My questions to the minister is, how how carefully would Alberta Infrastructure be around making sure that that information that they're interested in purchasing land is not leaked out to private individuals who might choose to purchase land and knowing that government's going to be interested and try to make a good profit off of that? What assurances can the minister provide to Albertans that that is not taking place within his ministry? I'm going to move over to outcome 2 of the business plan. It's sort of a related question. Outcome 2, of course, of the business plan talks about the ministry's goal to ensure that public infrastructure is effectively and responsibly managed using modernized and sustainable approaches. Again, a question that is a very live issue, I think, for Albertans right now around making sure that our infrastructure is effectively and responsibly managed. And there are a number of allegations related to health-related infrastructure, as the minister will be aware, which is also somewhat under the responsibility of his ministry. So I guess my questions are around, how does the government, knowing that those allegations are out there, how can the minister provide confidence to Albertans that these public infrastructure is being effectively and responsibly managed? There are very live issues. Are there additional steps that the minister is planning to take in this fiscal year to provide greater transparency, not just the standard procurement process, which we're pretty familiar with, but greater transparency around how those decisions are made, who might be responsible for making those decisions, whether it be ministry staff? Does the minister plan on, in the upcoming fiscal year, exercising greater oversight or intervention into decisions about how public infrastructure is managed? I'm asking ministers if there's going to be any changes coming out of the allegations that we have seen that will change his practice in his ministry going forward. I've got 2 minutes. I'm going to switch topics a little bit. I don't anticipate that the minister will be able to answer all the questions I've already asked in his block. I tend to get a lot of words in a period of time. It's a skill, I'll tell you, and a weakness. On page 12 of the Alberta Fiscal Plan, and also I believe in line 2.2 of the budget, which relates to health facilities. The fiscal plan notes that there have been legislative amendments that have been made that will permit property owned by health entities to be transferred to Alberta Infrastructure on April 1st, 2025. And then, quote, hospitals will be then leased back to the entities to operate and maintain, end quote. At a press event on February 28th of this year, the Premier said that the transfer of AHS's 700 health facilities and 380 land titles to Alberta Infrastructure, quote, will allow us to choose the operator and it will allow us to repurpose them to our needs. At the same time, Minister, through the chair, I understand that the press secretary stated in response to media questions, quote, there is no sale or purchasing involved in the transfer of these buildings. All properties will be transferred over on April 1st as part of the Real Property Governance Act, consolidating all government-owned property under one management. The context for these questions the questions related to that context, Minister, are this. This centralized approach to hospital ownership is unprecedented in Canada. Ontario, BC, and all other provinces have chosen instead to respond to locally identified needs and to give residents more say in decision-making. So through the chair to the minister, can the minister outline the government's rationale for centralizing the ownership of hospitals and health facilities under Alberta Infrastructure? Will the ministry's ownership of these facilities also include the current and proposed recovery centers and communities under the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction with Recovery Alberta? And I have another question related to that, but I'm going to run out of time, so I will stop there, but stay tuned, there'll be more.
Excellent, thanks, member, and appreciate asking the tough questions with language that would not cause disorder, so thank you for that. Minister, back to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, member. Really appreciate your passion and the number of questions you were able to get in a short period of time. I will start with your very first one around the private schools infrastructure, simply to say that we have no involvement within infrastructure in the private schools. That's all in education's purview. I will say, I'll just touch on the last one that you had, member, and then I'll jump back to allow my deputy minister to give some more information. But I am very well aware of the Minister of Health's plan for localized decision-making, even in the midst of your questions around transfer on healthcare moving forward. So I'll just leave it at that for now, but if I have time to come back to the rest of your question, I will. Deputy Minister.
Sure. So I can speak to the property acquisition within Alberta Infrastructure. We are committed to open, fair, and transparent practices when it comes to acquisitions, disposals, and managing of our properties. It's our responsibility to be stewards of government buildings, facilities, and lands, acting in the best interests of Albertans. So that's what we operate under. Speaking to that property, we became aware of it the way we would become aware of any property. We have agents that are looking at MLS that talk to other real estate agents, and we became aware that that property went for sale or was being put up for sale. And we had actually had a relationship with the original owner because we were leasing the parking lot of that same property to supplement parking at the Stanley Venn building next door. So when we heard that it was going up for sale, we started working on that. We'd had direction that this was a desirable property for government to have, and that's how we purchase properties. We have direction from other government departments for the need. We always have a business need for the property purchase. And so we reached out, we talked to them, but we have processes in place that require approvals up the chain within the department. And it sold before we could actually get our offer in. So we reached out after the sale was done to talk about the lease because we wanted to continue leasing the parking lot, at which point their lawyer informed us that the deal that they were looking at for that building had fallen through, and so they would actually be interested in a sale, and in fact, they'd already had another bidder as well. So we came in slightly higher than that other bidder at that point. It was all within assessed value. We always look to make sure that we are getting best value for Albertans, so we look at assessments, and we in some cases will do property valuations, that sort of thing, to make sure that we're in a good range, and if it meets the needs, then we would go ahead and purchase, which is what happened in this case.
Projects on hold.
To Brad.
Sorry, regarding the question about the 4 projects that are on hold and why they're on hold, that's, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm very familiar with those 4. So generally, we only put projects on hold when there's a scoping issue or it needs to be relooked at from a scope perspective. And that would come from the partner ministry education through the school divisions, through a request from the school divisions. So the 4 on hold are Athabasca Delta Replacement School in Fort Chipewyan, which is on hold while there's ongoing site selection studies done by the local school jurisdictions. John G. Diefenbaker High School in Calgary is on hold as the Calgary School Division has decided to look at, rather than a modernization, looking at a potential replacement school. So based on the age and condition of that school, modernization might not be feasible. They're doing a study on that. We have 2 that are on hold that are fortunately coming off hold or already off hold very shortly. Valley View School was on hold as the school division was looking at additional partner scope and funding from the town, but that's been resolved and design has now restarted. And Parkside School in Red Cliff was recently put on hold as, again, the school jurisdiction together with the municipality requested that rather than a modernization and addition, we do a full replacement school there. And education will be confirming that direction shortly.
So I believe the next on your list after that one was around the Minister of Finance's comments in their estimates. Again, I won't speak for their words, but if it's okay, I'll have my Deputy Minister account for our processes. Okay.
So that's part of the reason that we have those gated approvals that Minister talked about earlier. We know that there are labor challenges. We know with tariffs coming and just general escalation, we know that there are potential there. So we're working closely with our industry partners. All of our projects are built by industry, and so we work with them to refine scope, to refine the project. And as we go down, we come back for approvals to Treasury Board. We can't overspend without getting reapproved with at Treasury Board. So we have all of those processes in place to make sure that if there needs to be adjustments to schedule or if there needs to be adjustments to scope, we can do that and make sure that we are transparent in any of those areas where we may go over, so that we don't just go over. There are approvals in place to make sure that it is transparent and that we are managing it as best we can.
And the next one I had on my list, again, thanks for allowing me to skip around a little bit, was around transparency, member, and, everyone here knows I'm 3 weeks into the role, but transparency is something that I fully expect from government broadly and especially from a department that I'm going to be the minister of. And so while I'm new to the file, I will ensure to make sure that everything is looked at from my seat to make sure that we are being as transparent with how decisions are made with Alberta's tax dollars. And, anyway, I see that 3, 2, 1, sorry. Thank you.
Thanks with it. Now we're going to caucus members. MLA Wright has caught my attention. I'm sure you've been keeping up with how the meeting's running, so I'll let you carry on from here.
Cool. I was going to ask to see if I could sneak in a shared time, but I'm good with whatever the minister's discretion is.
We can try it, whichever you prefer, member.
You know what, just to keep it consistent, I'll go block. That's fine.
Do block? Okay, thank you.
No worries. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the minister, I just want to thank you for taking the time with your entire crew here today to answer some tough questions pertaining to infrastructure. And I've always kind of thought of infrastructure as the government of Alberta's project manager, right? Or a general contractor. You're the one who's running all the projects that everybody else dreams up. And, it's all about building Alberta on time and on budget with, different project management techniques, whether it's agile, waterfall, Lean Six Sigma techniques. Like anyone who's managed projects will know, you're only as good as the last project you delivered on time and on budget. And while, you also have other concerns like meeting the quality and design or the standards needed for community. Cost overruns are something that I'm concerned with, especially in light of what's going on south of the border, with tariffs on steel and aluminum being a significant risk to budgets, especially in light of these are the main materials in building today's structures. So the Ministry of Infrastructure collaborates with ministerial partners, boards, agencies, and other stakeholders to plan, design, build, and deliver government facilities like courthouses, correctional facilities, youth centers, and other provincial institutions. Key Objective 1.3 on page 101 of the business plan states that the minister will deliver capital projects on time, on budget, and to the scope to ensure high-quality public services. Given that infrastructure manages a wide range of projects across the province, can the minister please provide details on metrics that are in place to track projects, timelines, and budgets through construction? B, what infrastructure success rate for completing projects on time and on budget is? And C, what do you expect the effects of possible tariffs will have on infrastructure's ability to continue to complete projects on time and on budget? And then I'll send it back to the minister.
Okay, back to the minister.
Thank you, MLA, for your questions. So our ministry reports on 2 performance measures related to Objective 1.3. Performance measure 1A in our business plan reports on the average number of calendar days required to complete infrastructure managed over threshold procurements. It supports the ministry in creating efficiencies and allows for the timely delivery of innovative infrastructure solutions and higher quality outcomes by enhancing the ability to deliver projects on time, on budget, and to scope by developing more accurate project schedules and gaining efficiencies in the procurement phase. And allocating appropriate resources, assessing performance of procurement processes, and identifying and implementing continuous improvement opportunities, providing vendors with timely information to determine whether to pursue a procurement given time and resource restraints faced by the vendor community, and providing a heightened level of transparency about ministry procurement processes. This performance metric essentially evaluates how effectively the ministry is managing procurements by setting a target to complete them within 24 calendar days. The second measure is performance measure 1B, which reports on the percentage of infrastructure managed and delivered capital projects that are on budget and on schedule. On budget is defined as measuring how a project is progressing with respect to its approved budget. On schedule is defined as measuring how a project is progressing with respect to its approved schedule. Projects are considered to be on budget if they are forecast to be completed within their current approved budget or total project cost. Projects are considered to be on schedule if they are forecast to be completed with their current approved schedule. The on-budget and on-schedule performance measure applies to construction projects with a budget greater than $5 million, including government, health, and school facilities, as well as major capital maintenance and accommodation projects. For your second question there, what is infrastructure's success rate for completing projects on time and on budget? Alberta's performance metric targets and results compare favorably with those of other jurisdictions in Canada. In 2023, 2024, it took an average of 19.8 calendar days to complete infrastructure managed over threshold procurements. That's well below the target of 24 days that we have forecast for the next couple of years. Procurement times have consistently decreased since 2018, 2019, where the average back then was 29.1 days, primarily from applying lessons learned and process improvements. Regarding capital projects being completed on budget, in 2023-24, 96% were on budget. That's surpassing the target of 95%, which is our forecast target going forward as well. This ministry always strives to improve project budget performance. The reality is that the better we are on maintaining and beating the budget time or budget parameters, we have more money for other projects. And that's something that we can all celebrate in. But improving the project budget performance, this can vary between years as it's highly dependent on the timing of revised costing availability and project reviews and various approvals as necessary. While the desired outcome is for 100% of projects to be on budget every year, that's not realistic given the nature and challenges of construction. I think that you've alluded to some of the challenges that our construction industry, every ministry I would say are going to have to deal with, especially with the uncertainty around tariffs and what's happening at our borders. And so that's something that my ministry is in constant discussions with the construction industry about, and we'll continue to work with them on their concerns. And finally, as far as the capital projects being completed on schedule in 23-24, 93% of infrastructure capital projects were completed on time. That's just under our target of 95%, which remains our forecast target going forward. I will say that if I had 93% sex rate in everything else I do in life, I'd be pretty pleased with that. So I'm very pleased that we're at that level, especially with some of the uncertainty that we have faced over the last number of years. And again, I think that it's something that we can all celebrate. Project schedule performance actually varies over the years, and it's highly dependent on the management of unforeseeable circumstances, such as scope changes, material and workforce availability, and public health restrictions. The reasons behind the lower than targeted on-schedule metric in 2023-24 included scheduling delays, construction material delays, or supply chain issues, contractor performance, and additional time required for stakeholder responses. My department will continue to strive to meet and exceed the 95% performance target for delivering projects on budget and on schedule by maintaining best practices and incorporating further efficiencies. And in the last few weeks, I've seen the dedication and the grit, I would say, of department officials. And it's something that I know that they will continue to be striving for that 95% level and beyond. And I'll just try to stay out of their way on that as much as possible. For your other question, member, about what do I expect the effect of possible tariffs, what it will be on infrastructure's ability to continue to complete projects on time and on budget. I will say that the situation with tariffs is highly fluid, and the degree and cost impact on infrastructure's projects can't be forecast with certainty at this point. I think that we've heard a number of people over the last number of weeks in particular suggest that, you know, if you're not sure of the situation with tariffs, just wait 5 minutes, it might change. And unfortunately, that's something that we're gonna have to be fluid and rapid in responses with as a ministry and as government overall. You know, inevitably, we need to continue to move forward on the infrastructure that Albertans need and schools for Albertans' youth. You know, the construction of our schools or health facilities or major maintenance projects use specific materials, including steel and aluminum and lumber, which could all potentially be impacted by the tariffs. My department will continue to monitor the recent bids received from vendors on upcoming construction to obtain a better understanding of the impact on a typical project. And I've had a number of conversations in the early days with proponents, and I'll continue to personally make myself readily available for conversations with them as well, so I can be up to speed on that. But beyond making myself and my department readily available to have those open conversations, again, there's so much uncertainty around the tariffs and the impact that will have on or potentially have on our country and our province and the projects. So again, we will be very fluid in our response to that. And you know, continuing on the tariff conversation, you know, generally infrastructure's contracts are awarded to Albertan and Canadian vendors. Over 90% of all contracts and value are with Canadian businesses. And infrastructure has been and will continue to closely monitor the effects of those potential tariffs, as I say, in conjunction with our industry stakeholders. I think that I captured everything that you had, member?
Are you done with the time, Minister?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, back to the member.
I just have one more group of questions, then I'll pass it to the member from Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul. Minister, given that we've really seen Alberta over the decades as the prosperous area of the country, it's the beacon on a hill. When we moved from Ontario in the late 90s, we always called it the land of milk and honey. We're starting to see yet another population boom resulting from this desire to live in Alberta and grow a family or a business here. Infrastructure projects such as schools, hospitals need to be built as quickly as possible in order to keep up with our population growth. It's also very important to keep these projects as cost effective as possible that maximizes our investment over the long term. I noticed that on page 99 of the business plan, it states that the Ministry of Infrastructure is dedicated to seeking innovative ways to accelerate timelines and decrease costs for delivering infrastructure projects. Can the minister explain some of the ways that infrastructure can accelerate these timelines? And can the minister also explain how these projects are determined and what methods it's using to decrease costs on these projects? And I'll turn it over to the member from Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say it's good to see you in the role, sir. I know this is your first estimates, and so far you're doing a great job, sir. I did have an opportunity to come up and see you in Hinton in October, and I'll tell you, your role as a parliamentary secretary, you shined, and you also shined through the Jasper fires that went through your constituency. So I believe that the Premier's chosen the right man for this job, and I look forward to seeing what you can do with this ministry. Minister, one of my questions were surrounded by the P3s, but I'm going to tell you that you had pretty much answered all of those questions moving forward with the, so I'd like to move on to mental health and addictions. This is something near and dear to my heart when it comes to recovery centers. I've got, like many of the MLAs, we're all struggling with homeless and drug addiction. So as our government continues to strengthen recovery-oriented systems of addictions and mental health across the province, there's a need to build infrastructure necessary to accommodate new facilities for this type of programming. The Minister of Infrastructure is playing a key role in developing the facilities so that Albertans have a better access to mental health supports they need in their communities, according to page 108 of the fiscal plan. 85 million in funding will be allocated towards recovery communities. Can the Minister please explain what the role of his ministry is in developing the recovery communities in Alberta? How many recovery community projects has infrastructure completed so far, and how many are planned in the future? Once the recovery community is completed, it is turned over to the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction. When substantial completion of the project like this is met, what role does infrastructure play in the maintenance and care of these buildings? I cede the rest of my time over to you, Minister. And again, thank you for...
Please proceed, Minister.
Okay, thank you. And going back to MLA Wright's questions first, how we can accelerate timelines. Like, our ministry's been working on several fronts to help accelerate capital project timelines to deliver critical facilities that Albertans use. The main approaches we use are the in-year project funding approval, standardization of design specifications, reviewing internal planning processes, and procurement process enhancements. As I alluded to earlier in some questions, the new in-year budget approval process for school construction to help accelerate project progression through development stages will reduce project timelines by as much as 6 months anyway. And again, we'll continue to look at ways to get schools built. And then I believe the next part of that question was around explaining some of the methods we use to decrease project costs. With our efforts to expedite work, there are also a number of strategies we've undertaken to decrease project costs where possible in order to stay under or on budget and deliver value for Albertans. Some of the examples: pre-ordering materials and equipment as much as possible when cost escalation or supply chain issues are anticipated, reviewing all designs and required materials to ensure they are in line with best practice and required standards, and seeking comparable equivalents that will meet the needs of the project. Seeking innovations to building processes and materials, including the use of off-site developed materials that are repeated throughout construction, such as precast walls, to shorten the schedule. Increasing the standardization of specifications where possible that reduce late-stage scope additions and changes. Ensuring that all project stakeholders are aware of the overall schedule and are committed to providing any required information in a timely manner, and frequent cross-jurisdictional scans and comparisons to ensure that Alberta project costs are competitive and efficient. With that, I'll move on to Emily Sear's questions, and thank you for your kind words, Emily Sear. It's greatly appreciated. I might have to use some of the next block of time for answers on this, but something that I've personally had a passion for is seeing the recovery of folks who do struggle with addiction and mental health. And so to help address the crisis, we are committed to building the infrastructure necessary to accommodate new facilities around the province. My ministry, I'm grateful, is playing a key role in delivering the facilities which will help people better access mental health support services in their communities. And in collaboration with partner ministries, we oversee the planning, design, construction, and property management of recovery community facilities that will be owned by government. Infrastructure does not build all of these facilities. Some are actually being developed through grants to Indigenous communities, which are managed by mental health and addiction. Several recovery community projects are underway, resulting in hundreds of jobs related to design and construction. And our 2025 capital plan provides $148 million over the next 3 years for the Recovery Communities Program. $85 million of that is actually allocated in 2025-26. And of the total 3-year funding for the program, infrastructure has been allocated $75.4 million for the facilities that will be owned by government, while the remainder is with mental health and addiction. For how many community projects have we completed so far and how many are planned for the future? We're responsible for delivering 6 of the 11 recovery community projects, which we will own and maintain. Of those, 3 are completed. Red Deer, the 75-bed facility, was completed in 2022. Lethbridge is a 50-bed facility.
Thanks, Minister. We'll have to save that for the next part. We're going to, in the next section, we kind of refer to it locally as the lightning round and also the use it or lose it round. So it's 10-minute blocks. You can't speak longer than 5 minutes at a time. Time cannot be ceded to another member, and if time is not combined with the member and the minister, then you can only speak once. So with that, we'll do it after. We have to coordinate with the other room, otherwise it's like a family vacation and everyone's hitting the facilities at the same time. So we're just going to avoid that because it's only 5 minutes. So with that, which member is going first? MLA Pancholi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. You're doing a great job. I would just like to follow up really quickly on, block or shared?
Do you want to do block again?
I'm happy to do block.
There we go.
Thank you. Minister, I just want to follow up through the chair on one of the responses around that piece of land located at, I don't know the address again, 144 something. I think the ministry officials know it was 14425 124th Avenue. Thank you to the Deputy Minister for providing an overview of the process. I'm wondering if just in the response, if you can clarify, you mentioned that there was an initial offer that was being put together by the ministry to purchase that land. It fell through because of the timing and all of that. If you could just clarify when that purchase, that initial offer to purchase was put together, just a bit of a timeline in terms of when in 2024, if possible. I am going to pick back up on the questions that I was asking around the hospital ownership and the transfer of AHS's 700 health facilities to Alberta Infrastructure. So the question I'd asked is about will Alberta Infrastructure's ownership of these properties include the current and proposed recovery centers? And I think the minister was just starting to answer that in response to the other member's question. Can the minister also outline how decisions on leasing hospitals and health facilities will be taken? Will there be a competitive process to determine whether AHS or another operator is given the lease? How will Albertans who live in the facility's catchment area be involved in those decisions? Further questions around leasing agreements, how will they be negotiated? Will Alberta Infrastructure receive an annual rent from the owner of a facility? And will that be captured in the ministry's revenues going forward? And do we see that maybe even projected into this year's budget? Will Alberta Infrastructure be responsible for ensuring health and safety standards are met with all leased facilities, if they're in fact the owner of the facility? And how will the ministry ensure that patient safety continues to be the highest priority in these leased facilities? Albertans have seen through the chair similar attempts to lease operations of health facilities to private or nonprofit operators once before. 30 years ago in the 1990s, when the government took over the ownership of Holy Cross Hospital in Calgary and paid the Grey Nuns of Montreal to operate it until the hospital was closed in 1997 due to provincial budget cuts. Nearly 30 years later, the government appears to be revisiting this model. So I'm just wondering if that's the context for the questions I was asking. Through the chair to the minister, is it the government's intention to lease AHS hospitals to private operators or nonprofits like Covenant Health? Is the plan more than just consolidating the ownership of health facilities? If our public health providers no longer directly own the facilities they operate, which the government could step in, and as we've seen with what's happening right now under private surgical facilities, and further privatize Alberta's healthcare system.
The minister may not be able to answer some of those other policies, so if it's pertaining to the infrastructure side, then that kind of makes sense, so just.
So to the extent that the minister is able to answer those questions, I can also confirm that there have been, throughout estimates over the last 2 weeks, I know my colleagues and I have been in estimates in many other ministries where the response has been that it is Alberta Infrastructure who should be answering some of these questions. So certainly within health and with education and in mental health and addictions, many of these questions are being asked because they were referred to this committee from other ministries. So I also want to ask a little bit about privatization. Well, the new Minister of Infrastructure signed a letter on his own MLA letterhead to support a privately owned health center being proposed in Fort McMurray. In that letter of support, the minister noted that this proposed medical facility represents a, quote, a forward-thinking and necessary investment, as residents would be able to access primary care and specialized medical services. This letter was also signed, or similar letters were signed by Minister of Energy and the member for Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, in April 2023. So will the minister confirm that the government's plan is to achieve some cost efficiencies, but not to lease facilities of publicly owned health facilities to private or nonprofit healthcare providers such as Covenant Health? I have 45 seconds. I have a number of questions related to urgent care centers, which of course are listed on page 108 of the budget capital plan. $5 million is allocated for planning urgent care centers this year, and $10 million is allocated for the next fiscal year. There are currently 6 urgent cares operating in the province. And, you know, the minister will be aware probably of some of those facilities. So can the minister tell us whether all 8 of the urgent care centers that are planned will be publicly funded, built and owned by Alberta Infrastructure? For these urgent care centers, will the ownership of the current 6 urgent care centers be transferred to Alberta Infrastructure on April 1st? I'll stop there. I can see I'm going to run out of time.
Thanks, member. And Minister, back to you. And again, what you can answer, it's all fair game.
Thank you, member. I appreciate that. I've actually really enjoyed over the last number of months talking about the real property governance. Because as everyone here knows, the Act actually came into effect last spring, and as of April 1st this year, we'll actually see that transfer of health facilities. And the reason I say I've actually enjoyed conversations around that is I would say that there's a lot of misinformation that's being put out to the public, a lot of attempts to create some illusions about what's going on. And in the conversations I've had, the public, generally speaking, thought government owned the facilities already. And so it's made for some interesting conversations like, oh wow, like you guys are just doing what we thought already was the reality. As far as, I know that the member alluded to a letter I signed around a facility in Fort McMurray. I'll actually just address that with everyone. I think in our position should be aware of the limitations that are provided under the Canada Health Act. And that facility, should it potentially be built, would obviously be working within the confines of the Canada Health Act. So with that said, the thing that we've been very clear on was that Infrastructure will own the health facilities as of April 1st, 2025, and then lease them back to the health service providers to operate and maintain them under an established lease agreement. Obviously, the recent amendments to the Provincial Health Agencies Act will help refocus Alberta's health system and allow for the transition of Alberta Health Services from a regional health authority to its future state as an acute care service provider. This change will help government deliver new health facilities to Albertans more cost effectively by reducing property transactions and administrative burden. And my ministry will continue to work with health to establish that full inventory of properties and to examine the lease provisions and determine lease terms, to identify a path for approvals, leasing and purchasing of new property to align with the needs of the health system, and determine all financial aspects of the property transfers. It's my ministry's responsibility to ensure that all government buildings, facilities, and lands are effectively and transparently managed for the benefit of Albertans. And by modernizing our governance of these public assets, we will be able to provide greater accountability to taxpayers. Did you want to supplement some of the lease terms? Or
Do you want to supplement these? Yeah. Leases for.
I'll have
Just get you to read your name into the record, then you're good to go, sir.
Hi, my name is Leonid Ukrainsky, and I'm acting Assistant Deputy Minister for Properties Infrastructure. When it comes to the requirements of the lease with health facilities, the current plan, and the plan actually that we're going ahead with, is to have the head lease with AHS or whoever the entity will succeed AHS in the ownership. The head lease will include basically a carefree arrangement. So while infrastructure or government of Alberta remains an owner, all majority of responsibilities, with few very limited exceptions in law, will be transferred or will be requested to be undertaken by the head lease holder. In the head lease, the entity who will have the lease will have a right to sublease. And there is only one exception to that. They will not be able to sublease the whole building to whoever their program requirements. They will not be able to sublease the whole building, but they have the right to sublease portions based on their approval schedule or approval requirements and also operational requirements. If the building became or offered to be leased as a whole, it will be considered a surplus. And in this case, RPG ownership will remain with infrastructure, and it will be a surplus.
I hesitate to interrupt. We'll have to come back if that's required. And if it pleases the committee, would this be a good time to take a 5-minute bio break? Excellent, and we should have a clear path to the facility. So time goes quick. We'll see you back here in 5. 5 minutes. We are back to opposition members for their block. Oh, I'm sorry, to the government caucus. MLA Stefan.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will speak very slowly for just a second. Oh, now I'm gonna resume normal. I'd like to ask a question to our friend, the minister, what his preference is, shared time or block time. I'm gonna be mainly asking questions about the Red Deer Regional Hospital expansion, which is of great interest to many people in central Alberta.
I think we've been doing okay with block times so far, and if that's.
I'm just fine with block.
Awesome,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. I appreciate the questions actually from the member for Edmonton Meadows. He had asked some good questions about the Red Deer Regional Hospital expansion. And I know that members of your ministry had been providing a bit of a narrative, a bit of a historical, chronological kind of timeline on that hospital development. And I think we ran out of time just around October 2024 when Clark Builders had been appointed as the project manager. And I'm having a town hall on April the 2nd. And this is probably the biggest local issue, not only for many constituents, families, individuals in Red Deer, but the Red Deer Regional Hospital has a service area of around 300,000 to 400,000 people. And this is long overdue, so very happy to see that there is fair treatment for the Central Alberta region, actually, in respect of this expansion. So I'd love to get a specific timeline or continue that chronological timeline. And specifically, as I have this April 2nd town hall, I'd be very interested in of course, getting the current status, but also what families and individuals can expect to see in respect of the expansion in calendar year 2025. Where are we on that critical path? And what actual deliverables, what will be the things that we can see in respect of that? Now, kind of related to that is that, of course, it's great to have the infrastructure, but the infrastructure is really not that useful if there aren't healthcare services. And this does relate to infrastructure. I know that in the capital plan as well, and I should reference actually, and I apologize for not doing so, page 108 in the fiscal plan. And this sets out the table for 2025 to 28. Red Deer Regional Hospital is listed there, but so is infrastructure related specifically to the catheterization cath lab capital development. And that's very important service for Central Albertans. We were a bit of an anomaly. Of course, this is kind of a core healthcare service if you have a heart attack, and that's this acute care issue. And in Calgary and Edmonton, those services were available. And unfortunately, with a critical care hospital, I know that this is not available, at all hospitals, but when you have a critical care hospital, acute care hospital like the Red Deer Regional Hospital, service population of 300,000 to 400,000. We had similar sized hospital service population similarities in Calgary and Edmonton. And we didn't have that for many years, so it's good to see that kind of a core health service. I understand not all specialized health services can be in everywhere. I respect that. But this is kind of a core healthcare service. So I'd like to kind of understand where, from a capital perspective, that development will occur, and when we can see from a capital perspective that service can be offered to people in central Alberta in parallel with the expansion, the global expansion of the healthcare hospital. So with that, looking forward to hearing from members, either yourself, Minister, or members of your great team.
With that, Minister, back to you.
Thank you, MLA Stefan, and I do know that Red Deer is very fortunate to have two fine MLAs, yourself included. So thank you for your commitment to advocating for your region and your city. You know, the Red Deer Regional Hospital Center that I know that you've been a great advocate for, that redevelopment is one of the largest hospital projects that our government has ever, the Alberta government has ever undertaken. You know, our government's committed to ensuring residents of the Red Deer region can access the care they need when and where they need it. And as you've said, the catchment area for Red Deer includes a massive population. So this project is obviously very important for Red Deer and the surrounding communities. There are two major components of this redevelopment. Project 1 is the construction of a new patient tower and centralized power plant, along with expansion and renovation of the existing hospital's main building. Project 2 will be the construction of an ambulatory building. Early site works are complete, including demolishing the previous annex building and surface parking lot, and construction of the new patient tower is now underway. The completed project will add up to 200 new beds for a total of 570. Over the next 3 years, the 2025 capital plan is providing $557 million towards the total investment of $1.8 billion for the redevelopment of this hospital. The project will upgrade or enable several services throughout the hospital site, including the additional patient tower, the new centralized power plant, 6 new operating rooms, a new medical device reprocessing department, 2 cardiac catheterization labs, renovations to various areas within the main building, a newly renovated and expanded emergency department, and of course, the new ambulatory building located adjacent to the surface parkade. For your timelines, the actual functioning programming began in April of 2022 and was finished in March of 2023. And then the design began in June of 2023, was completed in October 2024. And as my team had mentioned, July 2024, Clark Builders was awarded the construction manager contract to build the new patient tower and expand the renovate the existing hospital building. The new patient tower will be 54,000 square meter building and is anticipated to be built in 2030. The ambulatory building is anticipated to be built in 2029. And there are efforts underway to tighten the timelines while recognizing that work is being conducted in an active acute care facility. With work happening on the existing site, the current hospital needs to stay fully operational, requiring the mitigation of noise, dust, vibration, and other construction-related impacts. The ambulatory building will be a multi-story facility of approximately 19,500 square meters with over 265 parking stalls below ground over 3 levels. It will provide medical and clinical support services, including addiction, mental health, and ambulatory procedures and diagnostic imaging to the Red Deer community. Around the temporary lab within the overall hospital redevelopment plan, cardiac care services are important to Central Albertans and Red Deer. And the Red Deer interim cardiac catheterization lab, I got it out a little bit better that time. That development will ensure that associated services can be brought on stream in advance of the new patient tower development. The interim cath lab will become available to patients in late 2027, while the new patient tower planned as part of the overall redevelopment includes 2 new cardiac catheterization lab spaces, and those will become available sometime in 2029. The $9 million allocated in 2025-26 will allow for preliminary construction activities to commence for that project. And in total, there is $22 million allocated in the capital plan for the interim lab over the next 3 years. So again, I really do appreciate how passionately you advocate for not only Red Deer, but the surrounding communities, MLA Stefan, and proud that we're able to start the process to deliver what you guys will need.
Thank you for that, Minister, and I see MLR Wright has caught my attention. It's all over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks again to all the folks on the ministerial team. We very much appreciate your presence, and of course to the Minister, Martin Long. I know that 3 weeks into a job, it can be a little bit, intimidating, to say the least, so I very much appreciate your dedication to the job. Thank you so much. My comments and questions will be directly reflective of the Minister Business Plan, page 99 and 100, Chair, where it talks about how the Ministry of Infrastructure delivers public infrastructure that contributes to the provincial economy and Albertans' quality of life, as well as the capital maintenance and renewal projects, upgrade and repair existing facilities, and the ministry being dedicated to applying best practices. In addition, I'm also looking again at page 99 of the business plan, where it talks about representing the building and maintenance community to share insights into best practices, page 96 of the fiscal plan, and again, ministry business plan, page 101. And I'm looking primarily not just at the what, in terms of what the ministry is involved in, Chair, but also the how. So my comments will specifically reference the how we get there, how we actually make sure that these buildings are constructed in a good way using best practices that are out there. So through you, Chair, and to the Minister, and this really does reference conversations that I've had with stakeholders, knowing the work that Employment Standards does, which I understand is not your purview, but in terms of investigations, when folks are not compliant with some of those employment standards, legislative items. We do know, unfortunately, that there are some very serious issues throughout the province, and both in public as well as private construction, particularly involving the exploitation of temporary foreign workers and folks that may find themselves in that undocumented state. And unfortunately, we do know that there is some issue with active construction job sites right now. We also understand, Chair, that it's a particularly common problem in transportation, but of course it can also show up in buildings and construction sites. We do know that some temporary foreign construction workers are presently living and working in unsafe conditions. It could just be that one bad actor within the construction center. They could be working for a particular company that may be involved in some of those illegal and unethical practices. But particularly, and this is where Chair, infrastructure really does come in for me, it's that issue of providing oversight. That issue of where the government of Alberta might be a contributor in terms of dollars, one of the leads, perhaps it might be in the capital plan itself, and given the number of projects now that infrastructure will be looking at as a whole, one of the things I'm really talking to is that effective and responsible management, which you've referenced a number of times. So one of the things that I would like some assurances on, Chair, through you to the Minister, is that in all of the procurement practices that the Government of Alberta is presently and will be involved in, making sure that fair practices for all workers involved in these projects and building accountability into the procurement process is something that simply will happen, particularly where contractors are involved. Specifically, what is the ministry doing to protect workers from the design and build all the way to the construction? What steps are taken in procurement to hold those contractors, and specifically as well subcontractors responsible for ensuring that those folks doing the work are safe, treated fairly, and making a good wage? What specific guidelines are in place to ensure that those companies and even those thinking about bidding, Chair, on government projects understand their legal and ethical obligations? Have there been any policy process or oversight changes implemented recently to ensure the safety of some contracted workers? And I'm asking about them specifically because that appears to be where things are sort of let go of a little bit. And I note also that infrastructure is committed to evaluating and continuously improving the vendor performance management program, and that this commitment involves stakeholder feedback and surveys. And with specific reference to what it is I've been talking about, I'm wondering which stakeholders, which which companies, municipalities, unions, industry associations, what's the timeline schedule for feedback? Is it continuous? Is there a schedule? And where might all of the what we heard documents live? And since the criteria for vendors involves both quality as well as safety, how then, or would there be criteria regarding the appropriate documentation of workers on those sites? Things like current safety tickets, journey person certification for both those apprentices in their first, second, third years, or for those people who've got that certification already, that ticket already. And further, would these performance indicators and assessments differ whether or not projects, Chair, might be P3s? Oh, 8 seconds left. There you go.
Well done, member. One thing before we go, Minister, also, we had another member join us at the table. If we get you to introduce yourself for the record, sir.
Good morning, Lauren Dack, MLA for Edmonton McClung.
Perfect. We're good to go. Minister, back to you.
Scared with the 8 seconds left, someone might expect me to ride a bull, but Emily Wright, thank you firstly for your kind words. We've served a little bit together on a few things, and you're doing a great job in representing your constituency, and I'm glad that you chose to take on this role. I will say that first and foremost, and then I will actually ask my acting deputy minister to speak to some of your concerns.
Thank you, Minister. So we work with we hire the general contractor and they hire this and down the chain. And so, yeah, that is something that undocumented or temporary foreign workers, it is something that is used in industry to supplement, because we know we have a labor shortage. We require that all of our contractors meet all of the safety standards through the Certificate of Recognition program, the CORE program. We, through our contracts, set out our expectations for what their contracts are like down the chain. We do expect that they meet all labor and employment standards, that those are all followed. We're not aware of any issues. Obviously, if we became aware of any issues, we would act on that. And the same goes for our P3 contracts as well. It's the same safety standards that we expect for all of our workers in Alberta, whether they are temporary foreign workers or they are Albertans through and through. We also, we have in the past worked with the Canadian Border Security Agency in identifying undocumented workers, that sort of thing. So we make sure that we're complying with all of the laws and all of the safety standards to make sure that those things are all top-notch for Alberta projects. With respect to the vendor performance management program, so it is a continuously improving program. We work with industry primarily on that. We have basically a subcommittee made up of representatives from across industry, and actually the whole program was set up that way with industry right from the beginning. We want to make sure that we're monitoring trends and that we're ensuring clarity on those key performance indicators within the program and within performance for those projects. So we regularly seek feedback from industry. We have surveys with program participants. All of the companies that participate in it are invited to provide feedback on a regular basis, as well as through the actual reviews within the program. And then that has allowed us to champion some best practices. We've also looked at other jurisdictions and what they do to that comparison. But we've been able to, as the program is developed, keep making those improvements so that it's getting best value, we're getting best performance, and then it allows industry as well to have those great scores that they can brag about for work on our projects. So hopefully that answers that question. Did I miss anything, Minister?
Yeah, so sorry, MLA, you had asked about if we had any new policy recently around this, and no, we don't at this point. And I mean, obviously, if folks are hearing of concerns, please make us aware, and we'll do our best to address it on our end. Okay. I do know we have a little bit of time left, and if it's okay, can I jump back to more of the land purchase conversation? Because I think that we've sort of covered most of the things that you'd brought up, Emily, right, and Kath?
Yeah, if we could get Leland, just to talk about the timeline for the purchase.
Thank you, Minister. So just to give a little bit of a timeline on the awareness of Department of Infrastructure and our actions on the purchase of the land. So we found out about the sale from real estate agent at the beginning of May. Between May and that same real estate also made us aware that there is multiple offer situation at the beginning of May, and also there is a conditional offer being put on the table, and the landlord or owner of the facility expects, again, sorry.
You're the one that's like the bull rider right to the wire, to the bell. There's no problem there. Thank you, sir. It's over to the Government Caucus, and MLD Young has caught my attention.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Minister Long. Would you like to do block time?
If we could continue, thank you.
Sounds good. Well, great to see you here today and to see you in that chair. Well deserved. I want to talk a bit about schools. I, of course, represent Chestermere. It's my home. We're in the donut community of Calgary, and we are just exploding with growth. Since 2011, I believe it is, we've grown nearly 50%. So, we've gone from the city that was sort of a new city to how I've heard some of my colleagues on the municipal level describe it, an adult, and we've skipped the teenager step. So we're feeling a lot of pressure on our infrastructure, and particularly our educational infrastructure. And I had the opportunity to door knock through all of our new communities last summer and just touch base with people. And it was very clear that people are moving to Alberta because this is the best place to live, to work, and to raise a family. And I think sometimes we use this as sort of a catchphrase, but it is a fact of life. We have many benefits here in Alberta. Looking at relative cost of living, and a lot of job opportunities as well. So people are moving here. And we are seeing record enrollment in our schools. This is certainly the case for my school divisions. And this increased enrollment has brought that heightened and urgent need for new and modernized schools. And I see on page 12 of your fiscal plan that the ministry is investing $2.6 billion towards new and ongoing school projects. And I know my constituents are extremely thankful about this investment. I know it'll have real benefits for the kids in Chestermere, but also in the other communities I represent. So my question, Minister, is how many school projects are underway in the province right now, and how does this compare to the same time last year? And how many school projects currently under construction will be completed by the end of this calendar year? And will any of these projects be ready for the 2025-26 school year? I think that's one of the questions I got asked the most while I was out meeting my neighbors, is that they want to know when we announce funding for a school, how long they have to wait till their kids can sit in those classrooms. And I'm also curious how many of these schools are being completed using the P3 model. Just 2 weeks ago, I got to attend the official grand opening of the Langdon High School, called Horseshoe Crossing High School, and I just love that name. And that school was built using a P3 model. It was bundled with several other school projects across the province, and I know that brought substantive savings for taxpayers, and that's a beautiful facility. I had a chance to walk through it before it opened for for classes last September, but we had the official opening, and one of your department officials attended as well. We were happy to see that. This is a school that will benefit the community of Langdon for generations to come. And it has great CTS spaces as well. And so that was really neat to see, and everyone in that community is thrilled about it. So well done. Thank you for making that happen for Langdon. So, continuing on with schools, it's not always just new schools, but, there's modular classrooms that play an important role in providing new student spaces as well. And I see on page 106 of the fiscal plan that there was an investment of $150 million over 3 years that's been dedicated to the modular classroom program. This is fantastic news. Again, I know Chestermere will really benefit from that in the interim while new schools are built. So if, just wrapping up here in my last couple seconds, if there's anything you wanted to say about the modular classroom program, Minister, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
And over to you, Minister.
Thank you for your questions, and again, sorry for liking everyone here today, but again, thank you for your efforts, Emily DeYoung. Your communities are very fortunate to have you representing them, and obviously, we all know how you are such a relentless advocate for Chestermere, Strathmore, and yeah, I just really appreciate your efforts. So we, as far as your first question around the school projects underway, and how that compares to last year, as of December 31st of 2024, there were 80 active projects underway in the province. This number included 59 in planning and design, 15 in construction, 4 that are on hold, as we talked about earlier, and 2 that are in post-construction. This is compared to 67 projects that were active at this same time the previous year. Of the 63 school jurisdictions that infrastructure works with, 38 of them have active projects. For the how many school projects currently under construction will be completed by the end of this calendar year, or the other part of that, I believe, was will any of the projects be ready for 2025-26? Of the 15 school projects across the province that were in the construction phase, 8 of them are expected to be completed by the end of 2025 calendar year. And of those 8, 5 will be opening to students for the beginning of the school year in September 2025. Those schools opening in September will be West Cooley Station Elementary in Lethbridge, the new high school in Camrose, St. Josephine Bakita Catholic Elementary Junior High in Edmonton, the new K-6 7 to 12 complex in South Calgary, and a grade 4 to 8 replacement school in Penhold. While we are on the topic of school completions, I'd like to point out that 84 school projects were completed over the last 5 years, from 2019 to 2020 to 2023-24, with an average of 17 schools built per year. Your questions around P3, none of the projects currently under construction are being delivered through the P3 model. However, the most recent school bundle delivered by P3 was completed just last year and referred to as P3 School Bundle 2, which consisted of 5 high schools located across the province, which added 6,375 new student spaces. Father Michael McCaffrey Catholic High School in Edmonton, Elder Dr. Francis Whiskey Jack School in Edmonton, and on a personal note, I've had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Whiskey Jack, an incredible man. Iron Ridge Secondary Campus in Black Falls, Opaha Secondary School in Leduc, and Horseshoe Crossing High School in Langdon. These schools all opened on time and on budget for 2024-25, and also there is $324.8 million approved for P3 School Bundle 5, or P3 SB5, over the next 3 years. And that bundle of school Schools, which is not yet in the construction phase, includes a new K-5 school in Blackfalds, a new K-9 school in Chestermere, a new K-9 school in Nolan Hill in Calgary, a new 7-12 school in Glenridding Heights in Edmonton, the replacement of the K-6 Ecole Good Shepherd with a new K-9 school in Okotoks, and a new K-8 school in Southwest Airdrie. And when completed, all those schools will provide 5,350 new student spaces. Full funding has also been approved for all schools identified in School Bundles 6, 7, and 8. And a P3 business case was completed for the bundles, noting value for money exists in each case. And in December of 2024, they were approved to be delivered using the P3 approach. Those bundles are strategically selected based on enrollment pressure, asset class, funding level, site readiness, and geographic proximity to major centers. And those schools will provide over 17,000 new student spaces. Bundle 6 will be 5,300 spaces, Bundle 7, 6,250 spaces, and Bundle 8 will be 5,830 spaces. And just to wrap up on that, P3 delivery for schools includes a 30-year maintenance term, and since 2008, the P3 delivery model for schools has saved taxpayers about $360 million when compared to the cost of delivering the schools using a traditional method. I might have to get back to you on the modular question.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Minister. And MLA Wright has caught my attention.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before I begin our remarks, though, my remarks, if we could please get tabled a written response that the ministry official was in the process of making, that would be absolutely lovely. Thank you.
Unless somebody told me otherwise.
Sorry, block time, would that be fine? Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very
No,
much,
all
Chair,
good.
for the reminder.
All good.
Okay, so I'll be referring specifically to pages 95 and 96 in the fiscal plan, speaking specifically to educational infrastructure, Chair. Page 101 of the ministry business plan, outcome 1, key objective 1.1 and 1.2, as well as once in a while, Chair, to the performance metrics. And I'm noting that the Minister of Education on February 15th confirmed that the construction of 11 new schools in Edmonton and Calgary will happen through the P3 process. Page 101 of the ministry business plan also talks about that working with ministry partners to deliver new construction and major modernization projects for health, school, and government-owned facilities, and trying to establish a wee bit of context here and referring, Chair, to that aspect of value for money when deciding whether or not a project should proceed through a P3 or a more traditional process. So we understand, of course, that new schools are desperately needed. As a former teacher, I certainly understand that, knowing that the school I was teaching at is completely and utterly overly subscribed at the moment. But I did, as I say, want to establish a wee bit of a context in terms of P3s and the history of Alberta, if I may. In 2019, the UCP government of the day announced that new school builds would be primarily P3s, but by 2022, Chair, that had changed. The minister of the time said that P3s would no longer be the preferred method, and noted specifically that money, though very important, is not the only consideration. There are other considerations that we want to adopt into this process and give value to. And one of the considerations at the time, Chair, was the availability of contractors, particularly in rural areas. Another consideration was the need to work with communities and municipalities, that idea that a school very much, Chair, becomes a school or community hub. And I will also note that at the time, certainly, the school boards were talking about the fact that P3s were not their preferred method of school construction. And I will also say I have personally had a wee bit of experience in P3s being built and having things happen after the building. Things like muddy fields, inability to put student work on walls, all sorts of issues with bulletin boards and where you can put your own work as well as student work, temperature concerns, buildings, and not being able to get that maintenance person into the building. So really a lack of responsiveness. And speaking specifically, when we look at P3s in terms of that value for money, we know that there were some schools in Saskatchewan who did indeed see some restrictions, Chair, on what teachers could do. There, the cost was estimated at 4 times more per school for maintenance over that longer term. In Nova Scotia, many P3 schools ended up being bought back by the government, and there, it was either Nova Scotia or Ontario, sorry, I cannot remember, don't have it in my notes, that had concerns that the process itself wasn't as transparent as it should have been. Getting to the questions, because I can see the time going away, what factors then influence that change in thinking from going to, no, we're not going to have P3s, and now we are going to have P3s? And would there be instances where the government might opt for that traditional approach rather than a P3 model? Would there be located somewhere preliminary analyses, business case documents, a record of successful and unsuccessful bids, evaluations of bids? Was there a specific metrics that was used to choose the successful vendors regarding that oversight and the performance metric beyond cost in delivering a project on time? I'm hoping there's some kind of evaluation of success of a P3 project where the school is concerned that isn't just about money. It's that front-loaded aspect. Have there been any longitudinal studies where you've actually, perhaps as either a government department or a specific little part of the department, talked to schools in that long term, in particularly in terms of the maintenance, that oversight bit? Could the minister explain the consultation process through the life cycle of these projects, from when it becomes a project all the way to that, again, 30-year maintenance? And also, do the contracts established have a health component to ensure a healthy workplace for those who work in schools, but also a healthy place for our children? For example, are there line items that define and conform to the most recent ASHRAE standards, their requirements for things like school ventilation, HVAC, and other systems?
And thank you with that, member. We just had another member join us at the table. If you could read your name into the record, sir, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Mr. Chair, Grant Hunter, MLA for Tabor Warner.
Appreciate it, sir. And with that, Minister, the next 5 minutes is back to you.
If it's okay, I'll let Brad speak to it.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So obviously with our school P3s, we have a very strong track record on P3s in Alberta. Alberta was a pioneer of the P3 model. We have a very successful and award-winning track record of delivering infrastructure using P3s. In fact, P3s are used around the world. You mentioned a couple of other jurisdictions. We're aware of several jurisdictions around the world that are using P3s to deliver schools, as they do increase efficiency, encourage innovation, and improve quality for the right projects. P3s are only one tool in our toolbox. When a specific project's business case presents value for money with a P3, we may proceed. When it doesn't, we use other delivery models. In the past, and you referred to, the time period from 2019 to 2022, I think at that time we were trying to maybe do too much with P3s and put everything into P3 bundles as much as possible. And what we learned is that the market didn't necessarily respond. It's difficult with bundling to get the real economies of scales and efficiencies when the schools are spread all throughout the project in rural and smaller municipalities. So we have, since 2022, really refocused P3s on the major centers, primarily in the Edmonton-Calgary corridor, and using traditional models outside of that corridor. And we are seeing greater response from market and, as a result, greater value for money. Speaking to the the maintenance and renewal, once the school is operational, the P3 vendor then becomes the maintenance provider for that school. School jurisdictions previously have raised concerns about the speed and effectiveness of maintenance on the P3 schools, and we are aware of some of those issues from the legacy P3 program, which was completed earlier in the 2000s. We have made significant amendments to our project agreements to address school jurisdiction feedback related to maintenance issues. And now happy to report that over 99%, I think it's actually 99.7% of the time, P3 school providers complete their maintenance on time And when they don't, there are financial penalties, and that is one of the real benefits of the P3 project, is that that private company has money, has dollars on the line at risk if they don't perform on time. We do consult with stakeholders frequently throughout the process, obviously up front in the planning to define the requirements, to look specifically at are there partner spaces, are there specialized career technology career and technology studies spaces that school jurisdictions want to include. That gets then put into the design. We work with them throughout the design to make sure that those standards are then translated into the contracts and the actual design drawings. And then through construction, we kind of go away and build it, and they they come out and get to see the site as it's being built. And then for sure, as we ramp up into commissioning and turnover, there's extensive involvement with the school jurisdictions as they get in, start to procure their furniture and equipment, and we coordinate very closely with them on that. And then after they're in the school, we do post-occupancy evaluations. And so not just from an infrastructure standpoint of, as the school, did the design meet the standards, but we actually talk to the jurisdictions, we talk to the staff in the schools of, is the space actually working and functional for you? And all of that feedback gets incorporated into lessons learned that we can incorporate into future school projects. So heavy involvement from stakeholders throughout the process. In terms of meeting health and safety standards for students and occupancies, we have technical design requirements that mandate the standard requirements for all schools. So no matter who builds them, no matter who designs them, they have to meet our minimum standards, which would include anything related to safety of the students and the staff that are using those facilities.
And, sorry, with the 10 seconds left, I will say that on that land transfer, you asked for the timelines in writing, and we have nothing to hide on that. We will certainly provide those.
Member Sear, you got my attention?
Thank you. Minister, would it be okay if we went back and forth? I'd like to hand my time over at the beginning here so you can finish your thoughts on the mental health facilities.
Sure.
Would you continue with the fulsome answer that you had for my last question on the recovery center models that you were going through?
Okay, so just yes, so thank you, Emily. So I believe I was about to start with explaining that our government is continuing to strengthen our recovery-oriented systems of addiction and mental health care. I actually remember talking about addressing the crisis. We are committed to building the infrastructure necessary, and the three that are completed, I believe I mentioned a couple, and I'm not sure if I got the last one out, but the Lakeview Recovery Community in Gunn was the third one on my list, which is a 100-bed facility that we completed in 2024. The remaining three projects that were on the list of the six that we're delivering would be the Valley View Lodge, which is now the Calgary Recovery Community. It's a 75-bed facility currently under construction and anticipated to be opening or complete soon. Grand Prairie, a 50-bed facility, is in the procurement stage. It is expected to be done in 2027, and the Alberta Hospital site in Edmonton, a 75-bed facility, is also in procurement and expected to be complete in 2027. The other 5 recovery community projects are grant-funded through Mental Health and Addiction, who provide the funding for facilities being built in Indigenous communities, which will be owned and operated by the First Nations. All of those are underway currently at different stages, including locations at Blood Tribe, at Enoch Cree Nation, at Sutina, Siksika, and at Métis Crossing. Infrastructure has also recently completed 3 projects in support of this program to renovate therapeutic living units located at correctional facilities in Calgary, Lethbridge, and Fort Saskatchewan to enhance addiction supports. That was on. So the, I believe you asked about what infrastructure's role was in the maintenance of and care of the physical building. So except for those recovery communities owned and operated by First Nations, after substantial completion, infrastructure will own the facilities and is responsible for ensuring the buildings operate as intended by addressing any outstanding deficiencies in maintaining building systems. So infrastructure will contract a total property manager to oversee the maintenance and care of the physical buildings, and that manager is then responsible for all aspects of the property and ensuring the building systems operate efficiently and the facility remains suitable for residents and program activities.
Thank you for that, Minister. And I can tell you from my region, Métis Crossing, while it's not in my constituency, that's in MLA Van Dyken's constituency, I am very excited to have access to that facility for our area. Minister, I'd like to touch on Swan Hills Treatment Center. This facility was a purpose-built for the process of destruction of the high concentration of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCs. This is the only facility is the only of its kind in the country. The federal government regulations require the end of use and destruction of HCPCs by the December 31st of 2025. This means that Swan Hills Treatment Center is no longer required and is slated to be closed or decommissioned. On page 136 of the government estimates, line 3.2, 1 million has been allocated funding for asset retirement obligations and environmental liability related to the Swan Hills Treatment Center. Could you please provide us with the status of the planned closure and decommissions of this facility? What is the estimated cost of the closure, and has it been fully accounted for? And is there a plan in place for the future of this site, sir?
Thank you for the question. And for your awareness of the facility and the issues, and I will simply say HCPCBs. That's enough of a tongue turner in and of itself. But so yeah, after the center stops accepting new waste, remaining inventory will continue to be processed for a short time to align with federal recommendations. After the facility is closed, there will be a requirement to decommission and address environmental liabilities and perform long-term environmental monitoring and testing of the site. Infrastructure submitted 2 requests for funding to the federal government to help fund the decommissioning of the facility. Shockingly, both of these funding requests to the federal government were denied. Therefore, remediation work will be fully funded by our government. In budget 2024, a request to delay closure of the site for at least 1 year was approved in order to accommodate a further review of operations, including a review of other potential revenue generation opportunities. If no viable alternatives are found, the center will completely close in 2027 and decommissioning will commence, which will take a number of years to complete. And infrastructure has sought private sector feedback on operations and possible future use of the center, and we are currently exploring responses for feasibility and viability. As far as the estimated cost of this closure, and if it has been fully accounted for, $1 million has been budgeted in 25-26 for dismantling and decommissioning some of the areas of the Swan Hills Treatment Center that are not in use anymore. This work will draw down on an asset retirement obligation liability that has been established for the center. As part of the ownership responsibilities for the site and as outlined in the operating license, infrastructure is responsible for the full decommissioning and remediation of the asset upon closure. The cost of this decommissioning and remediation was calculated by a consultant and is estimated to be $255 million upon closure in 2027. This includes the obligation for the ongoing monitoring and operating and maintenance of the site once it is decommissioned. And the obligation is fully funded and accounted for once the site closes. This liability is reviewed annually and is adjusted depending on factors such as inflation and estimated cash flows. As a result, the liability can vary from year to year. Most of the decommissioning will be done once the plant is closed in 2027. Ongoing monitoring will occur once decommissioning is complete to mitigate any risk after the waste disposal process components are dismantled. The deep well and capped landfill waste site will remain but will be secured and monitored. And as far as plan in place for the future of the site, in September 2024, Infrastructure issued a request for expression of interest to determine if any private sector interest in the future operation of the facility exists. This was posted on Alberta Purchasing Connection, as well as advertised in print and in online publications. 3 responses were received when it closed in January 2025. Infrastructure is currently reviewing these submissions to determine the feasibility and viability of the proposals to see if any would warrant further exploration. In the past, Infrastructure has explored other possible future options for the center, including construction of biomedical waste treatment center, using the center as a class 1, 2, and 3 landfill, establishing the site as a recycling or composting facility, developing solar farm, creating a facility for power generation using waste heat, or turning the site into a hydrogen production facility or for biodiesel generation. In recent months, Infrastructure staff have also consulted with both the town of Swan Hills and Big Lakes County regarding the future of the center. The cost prohibitive nature of the site and its possible uses have not resulted in any viable options being identified at this point, unfortunately. If no other options are deemed viable in the ongoing evaluation, decommissioning of the site will commence as planned.
Thank you for that, Minister. I know that, or you may not know, that I was born and raised in Slave Lake, which is right next to Swan Hills. So I have a lot of family in the area. So clearly this is important to the Lesser Slave Lake region as a whole. Again, whenever something as big as what's happening right now, and it looks like the federal government's dropped the ball here with their responsibility in this. So thank you for your leadership in this role.
Member Diold's comment, right?
Yes, sir.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and once again through you, Mr. Would you like to go with the share time or?
Let's do block again, if that's okay. Just,
Blocking,
yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Yep. I know we have a lot of comments and commentary about P3 models, and the government of Alberta is right now a big proponent of P3 models. And I heard Mr. Smith saying that you have a very strong track record on P3s, and I'm sure you would have information. I believe you if you're saying that. And we also hear like a lot of concern, as my colleague, the MLA for Edmonton Beverly was referring to a number of things. We were hearing and listening, and the experience she had at firsthand with regards to P3 models. So I would once again like to stress the need for the value for money report. A reason why saying, I think also Ms. Wright was going to refer to something that I wanted to mention before was the Ontario AG report in 2014. So in his investigation report, they outlined that the P3 model costed them $9 billion more than they would have otherwise. And the reason they given for that was that private sector financing was costing much more than what it would have costed in the public sector. And the cost they ran to was 14 times higher than the cost they would have in public sector. I think the value for money report would really shed light on number of things and probably address the many concerns of the stakeholders. And Minister can answer this question now if it doesn't need to see the urgency, and you can always, answer this question later on if Ministry would like to consider to generate the value for money report or not. And I also want to come back to the government estimates, page 139. The capital investment lost actually a good chunk of money, $50 million. That was 23% in last budget. And now it lost $11 million again in this current year of budget. And on page 138 of the government estimates, the government-owned facilities preservations received a 40% cut. It's almost $10 million cut. And then on page 139, the government estimates the funding allocation to the government facilities infrastructure is less than 42%. It's cut by 42% from the past year. So budget is reduced by $67 million. So when I see the line item 3.3 says the government-owned facilities preservations is for repairs, upgrades, maintenance, and replacement of building systems and building services equipment for government-owned buildings. And this question is coming directly from my experience and also from many stakeholders. I have visited their places, they are experiencing a huge maintenance deficit, and that is impacting their daily operations. I would really appreciate to know what this is related to, why the funding is keep going down, what metrics we are taking into consideration when we are doing this. And for page 142 of the government estimates, there are about over $2 billion in credits for capital construction and property management. So my curiosity is that what is this and where this is coming from, and which of the government plan and project was impacted or compromised, and what changes had happened that contributed to $2 billion of credit in the estimates. And I just wanted to refer to, I think I'm going to lose time. I had so many more questions. I will probably send it in writing. And one of the questions was about unsuccessful vendors. I will probably ask it next time, because unsuccessful vendors in P3 models are awarded what we call honorarium. So that was around where we can see in the budget and where we can see that information, the list of those unsuccessful vendors, who they were, and how much money was awarded in the past year and how much money is.
Right to the wire. Minister, back to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, through you, to Member Dale for, in my estimation, being the best critic that we have. So appreciate your efforts, Member. I'll just start with just a simple comment around, as Brad had mentioned earlier, P3s are simply one tool that infrastructure has in its toolbox. And from 2004 on P3s that we've had on 11 major projects, the value for money these projects have saved is $3.4 billion in net present value, which obviously we're able to use for other projects and other services. But on the honoraria, I'll have Brad speak to that, please.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, as Minister Long mentioned, so we've invested $8.1 billion across the province on 11 major capital projects, including schools, highways, and a water and wastewater treatment facility, which has generated $3.4 billion in value for money on a net present basis. And all of the value for money reports are posted on the website, on our website. So we do publicly post all value for money reports as soon as the procurement is complete and the contract is awarded. Regarding the unsuccessful proponents and the honorariums, submitting a P3 proposal is a very significant undertaking. It involves a large amount of work, including engineering and design, project planning, setting up partnership agreements, and arranging financing. So essentially, teams are forming and setting up they're setting up special purpose vehicles to pursue the project, and then if successful, to deliver the project. So it is a significant undertaking, and as a recognition of that, honorariums are paid. It does not in any way reimburse a bidder for all of their bid costs. It will pay a fraction of what their actual pursuit cost is. But it does allow us to attract bidders to participate in the process and give them some incentive to bid, even though there's no guarantee of winning. The honorarium amount is included in the project budgets, and it is included in the value for money calculation as well. So that is accounted for when we're determining value for money. Just some figures for you: between 2015-16 and 2018-19, $3 million in P3 honorarium payments were paid. So again, when you look at the honorarium amounts compared to the value for money that has been generated by P3, it's very small compared to the value for money. And maybe just one final thing, not to be too much of a cheerleader, but we continue to win industry recognition, global recognition for our P3s. In November of 2024, the Government of Alberta won the Silver Award for P3 Design and Construction from the Canadian Council of Public-Private Partnerships. And in October of 2024, Alberta's first ever P3 project to complete its operations period, which is the Evan Thomas Water and Wastewater Treatment Plant in Kananaskis, won the Best Operational Project at P3 Partnerships Bulletin Award, which is an international, a global recognition for Alberta P3s. Thank you.
On page 142. Can I just clarify one of your questions, member? You said at page 142 that $2 billion in credits, property management. I believe it was 200 million. Was
It
the
was
number.
200 million?
I believe.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that number is actually $190 million for amortization of capital assets, $11.4 million for the asset retirement provision for Swan Hills Treatment Center, and $1.5 million for consumption of inventory for the Swan Hills Treatment Center. Okay, and I unfortunately ran out of time. So thank you again.
Thank you, and very congenial work over there in the corner. We had a combo/block time, but MLA Stefan has caught my attention. Would you like block or shared?
I'm fine with shared, just given that we only have 5 minutes, if that's acceptable.
Give it a shot for the last 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll just kind of be a bit fluid, because I want to make sure you have time. Minister, I'm just going to kind of ask about two things. So I'm just going to refer to, of course, to our business plan, page 101. 1.3, which is one of the key objectives of the business plan, is that projects are done on budget. And appreciate, of course, you're new to this ministry, and sometimes you inherit projects that unfortunately cost more than they were budgeted for. I want to kind of cite the new Red Deer Justice Center as an example. And of course, Central Alberta has grown a lot, you know, as other parts of Alberta. And there was a need for an expansion of the existing infrastructure there, just given the number of people who have moved into central Alberta and needing those justice centers. And when the courthouse was first announced in 2017, and that was, before any of us were here, the budgeted cost was around $97 million. And now the cost, kind of fast forward to 2025, it's just been completed and it's over 200 million. And I think you make a really good observation. I heard that to the extent that we are not on budget, that it crowds out other worthy capital projects wherever it is in Alberta. Whether it's in Edmonton or Calgary or other parts of our wonderful province. So I'd like to understand, maybe just as kind of a final question, what culture we can have in infrastructure to instill more fiscal discipline in the construction of capital projects, because we don't want to see these things happen on a go-forward basis. I'd also have a question about what we are planning to do with that surplus land with the old courthouse. That is a very unique piece of property, and probably there may not have been time to kind of look through that, but that property is unique, and so it was kind of made for use of court services, and now it's a little bit more difficult. And just kind of to end as well, we've talked about a lot of things today. I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about maybe what you're most excited about for this upcoming year as well. So I'll cede my time, the rest of the time there. It's not much, but if you want to talk about a couple of those things, that'd be great.
Thank you, MLA Stefan. I don't believe at this juncture we have a plan for the surplus land, but thank you. I'll continue to keep an eye on that. And I actually really appreciate your question about culture, because I already had conversations with our team leadership about the culture that personally I would want to have a hand in promoting. And one aspect, I don't want to get ahead of how I'm going to speak to the department too much, but every member of my team is valuable to how my team operates. The lens that I put on that in conversation is we all can have a bad day when we show up to a workplace that is disheveled. And so from that standpoint, let us not dismiss the people who keep our workplaces tidy and orderly. Every single member from top to bottom to top is a valuable member of our team at Infrastructure. And the culture that I aim to create is for them to know that and for that to be acknowledged throughout our organization. I will say that I'm inheriting a ministry that is highly motivated already. I can't deny that in these early days. They are highly competent as well. And those are things that I'm going to leverage as we move forward and ensure that our entire department is valued and appreciated.
Well, yeah, no problem. Fail to hesitate to interrupt or to break up a group hug. That was very nice, everyone. And in that vein too, I'd also like to thank all the members for today, for how everyone was held, how the questions were asked and answered. Gold stars all around. Well done, everybody. With that, though, I must advise the committee that time allotted for consideration of the ministry's estimate has concluded, and this concludes the consideration of the 2025 main estimates. And with that, it's a wrap. Meeting adjourned. Take care, everybody.